for us today led on the delivery of those commitments and are here to tell us today about the substantial progress their agencies are making during the first year of the implementation of this act. We've already seen the CHIPS and Science Act spur more than $200 billion of private sector investment from semiconductors across the country to other investments.
While we're waiting,
and the federal government's role in this is so important because the commitment to the CHIPS Program Office within the Department of Congress is generating more than 500 statements of interest from companies looking at new projects and innovation. So today we'll have a chance to ask the Secretary about those proposals, building resiliency and long-lasting
kind of regular order process
semiconductor ecosystem in the United States.
Science,
Since we had a chance to discuss this earlier
in today's hearing to
pretty sure we're going to hear today about how much never going to be
that maybe
this problem again as it relates to legacy chips,
that we are
as
going
it was to all of us who are working behind the scenes
on a supply chain
daily to try
to
figure
that our
this
DoD
policy stature is going to continue
we'll
to
go
be
ahead
on
and
the
get
cutting edge.
started, and then when my colleague
And
gets here,
I
hopefully
think you're
he'll be
going
here
to
tell
tell
us
us
that
the
we will
diversity
make his
of applications.
Welcome,
Secretary Raimondo,
means that
and
ecosystem
Director
that we are trying to restore and
Hanch,
grow
is it okay?
is alive and well.
We've also seen NSF
thank you for
begin to
being
roll
here
out
with us
innovation engines. More
I
than
also want
43
to
million
mention that
going
apparently
to
there is
planning
a
grants to
FEMA
tap
emergency
innovation
alert
across the
test that's going
country.
to happen today. So
I love
everybody in the
that
room gets
the
a
director alert message.
during
That's what
our
that's about,
efforts.
and basically coined the
Not
phrase
to be
innovation
concerned
about it. But that everybody knows that it's
anywhere.
going to go off.
opportunity
So
everywhere.
a little more than a year
And I
ago,
definitely think
Congress
that is what we
passed the
were looking
landmark
for
CHIPS and Science
in this
Act, and it was a
legislation,
clear commitment
both
to
in the
America's
spreading of
competitiveness and the idea
amount
that
of
we need
EPSCoR
to
funding and
innovate in the United
diversifying
States.
workforce
And
opportunity
clearly,
across
we
the
were
United
doing
States.
a lot in innovation.
For example,
We were
in the
publishing
state
a
of
lot, but
Washington,
we needed to
Spokane
translate
company
more,
won
patent
regional
more,
innovation
and
engine
really
award
help our
to advance energy
manufacturing base be
decarbonization
competitive for the future.
We all know that innovation
Two witnesses
and expertise
before
helps
us today
generate
led
jobs
on
and
the
tackle some
delivery
of our most pressing
those
problems.
commitments and are here to tell us
And
today
we
about
know
the
that
substantial progress their
what we
agencies
have
are
to do on
making
this committee,
during the first
besides
year
hearing
of the
from these
implementation
witnesses
of
today
this act.
is push our
We've already
colleagues to
seen the
fully
CHIPS and
fund
Science
the
Act spur
aspects of
more
CHIPS
than
and science
$200 billion
that were
in
funded.
private sector
In fact,
investment
the committee's two
from
previous
semiconductors
attempts at
across the
competitive
country
bills
to
fell
other
short
investments
because the funding was
and
not
the federal
realized. One,
government's
because we faced an economic downturn,
role in this
and then the other
is
just in,
so important
our
because
very first
the
effort on
commitment to
competitiveness
the CHIPS
also did
Program
make
Office within the Department of
mark
Congress
from
is generating more than 500 statements of interest from
so
companies
we know that our foreign
looking
adversaries
at
are
new
not waiting.
projects and innovation.
We know that our strategic
So today we'll have a
competitors
chance
are
to ask
also
the Secretary
moving ahead,
about
and we
those
need to make this
proposals,
investment
building
to
resiliency
what we
and
would say
long-lasting
de-risk the supply chain,
semiconductor
and make sure that we
ecosystem
are
in the United
innovating
States.
and translating
had
our
a chance
science
to
faster.
discuss
this earlier.
As we
Pretty
look
sure
to the
we're going
future,
to
we need to
hear
work together to
today
ensure
about
that the
how
U.S. remains
we're never going to
competitive
be
in the global
problem
marketplace
again as it relates
on
to
other
legacy
issues
chips,
like
that
artificial
we are going to
intelligence,
have a
5G
good plan
wireless
to help
systems,
on a supply
and
chain
quantum
development
computing
for that.
And that will
DoD
require the
stature is going
United
to continue
States
to be
to
on the
do a
cutting
couple of
edge of
things. The
chips.
ability of the
And
U.S.
I think
to
you're
produce
going
and
to tell
produce
us
chips
that
to
the
support this
diversity
innovation.
that's
of
why
applications,
the advancement
the robustness
and hearing where
of
we
it
are with the
means that
applications is so
ecosystem
important.
that we are trying to
Second,
restore
we
and
need a
grow
resilient
is
supply
alive
chain
and well.
that can withstand.
We've also seen
disruptions like we
NSF
saw in
begin
the
to
past,
roll
either
out innovation
geopolitical
engines,
tensions, natural
with more than
disasters,
43
global
million going
pandemics,
to planning
whatever.
grants to tap
We need
innovation
a
across
more
the country.
dependent supply
I
chain.
love that the director
a workforce that is well skilled
efforts
and technical.
basically
to
coined the phrase
types
innovation
of technology that are being produced
anywhere.
today. I personally
Opportunity
believe this is one of
everywhere.
the biggest gaps.
And I
left
definitely
to be
think that is what
addressed
we were looking
in the
for
CHIPS and Science
in
Act.
this
We have
legislation,
some money,
both in the
for
spreading
semiconductor
of the
training and
amount of
workforce
EPSCoR funding
advancements
and in
some
diversifying
on the science
workforce
side to
opportunity across the
But
United
a lot
States.
more
For
needs to
example, in
happen.
the state of
The United
Washington,
States, jobs of
Spokane
tomorrow
company
are here
won a
today,
regional
but the skill
innovation
level of
engine
the
award to
workforce to
advance
do them
energy and
is not.
decarbonization.
And so the more
We all
that
know
we can
that
take advantage of
innovation
the
and
job creation that's
expertise
happening
helps
by
us
marrying
generate
that up,
jobs
something the
and tackle
Secretary
some of
knows
our
from
most
her days as
pressing
governor.
problems.
The more we can streamline
And
that
we
and marry
know
that up
that
together, the
what
more this
we have to
engine
do on this
is going
committee,
to rev
besides
and keep
hearing
affecting
from these
the US
witnesses
economy.
today is today U.S. manufactures only 12% of the world's
aspects of chips and science
semiconductors
that were
compared to
funded.
where we were in the
In
1990s
fact, the
at
committee's
30%.
two previous
So the
attempts
question
at
really
competitive
today
bills
is,
fell short
are we seeing
because
the
the
right
funding
level
was
of
not
investment
realized. One, because we
to
faced an
make a
economic
return
downturn,
to
and
the
then the other
market
just
that we
in,
think is important.
Our
My
first
guess is
very
we're going
first
to hear
effort on
both from the
competitiveness
private sector
also
investment that's
didn't
already
make
been made
the
and the
mark
robust
from
response
a,
to the programs. We're going to hear that the investment
perspective
wants to
so
be in the
we know that our
United
foreign
States.
adversaries are
So,
not waiting.
We know that
I
our
think we can't
strategic
emphasize enough how
competitors are
important it
also
was to
moving ahead,
bring this
and we
manufacturing
need to
back.
make this
Consumers
investment
are
to
car
what
prices
we would
raise
say
as much
de-risk
as
the supply
40%.
chain,
Truck manufacturers
and
like
make
PACCAR
sure
and
that we
MyState
are
weren't able to get
innovating and
semiconductors,
translating
weren't
our
literally
science
able
faster.
to ship product.
Supply
As we
chain
look to the future, we need to work together to ensure that the U.S.
resiliency
remains
also,
competitive in
deadlocks
global
for other
marketplace
industries
on other
and
issues
impacted
like
national
artificial
security.
intelligence,
So,
5G wireless
I hope
systems,
that,
and quantum
we will all
computing
work together on better tools
and that
for the
will
future.
require the
I'll
United
have some
States
questions
to
about
do a
that
couple of things.
in,
The ability of the
in the
U.S. to produce
question and answer
chips
period. But,
to support this innovation. That's
the
why
semiconductor
the
industry
advancement
today
in
is
hearing where
facing
we
a
are
gap
with
of
the applications is so important. Second, we need a resilient supply chain that can withstand
That's just
disruptions like we
semiconductors.
saw in the past,
So,
either geopolitical
I know
tensions,
we in
natural
my
disasters,
state,
global
as
pandemics,
relates just to STEM,
whatever. Have a gap
we
of
need a
60,000
more dependent
workers
supply
across
chain
various
and,
sectors, not just
a
semiconductors.
workforce that is well
So clearly, we need to make
technical
the investments in the
types of
scholarship
technology
programs
that are being
and in the
produced
STEM
today.
apprentices.
I personally
and
believe
workforce
this is
for
one of the
tomorrow
biggest gaps
to
left to be
realize all
addressed
this investment
in the Chips
that is
and
now
Science
being
Act.
made in
We
the United
have
States of
some
America.
money.
So
both
welcome
for
to our witnesses. I'll turn it over to my
semiconductor training
colleague,
and workforce,
Senator Cruz, for his opening
advancements, and
statement.
some on the science side. through
Thank you, Madam
NSF.
Chair, for calling
But
this
a lot
important
more
hearing.
needs to
And
happen.
welcome
United
Secretary
States
Raimondo,
jobs of tomorrow
Director
are here today, but the skill
Panchanathan,
level
for
of the
both being
workforce
here
to do
today.
them is not.
Semiconductors
So the
drive
more
our
that
modern
we can
economy.
take advantage of the
From
job
cell phones and
creation
cars
that's
to
happening by
supercomputers
marrying that
and
up,
medical
something the
devices.
Secretary knows from
These
her days
integrated
as governor.
circuits have been integrated
The more we
into
can
our daily
streamline that and
lives.
marry that up together.
Before
the more this
2020,
engine
however,
is going
when we
to rev
suddenly couldn't
and
get
keep
enough of
affecting
them,
the U.S. economy.
most of us probably didn't
Today,
realize
U.S.
just how big
manufactures
a
only
role these
12%
chips
of the
play.
world's
It became very
semiconductors
quickly
compared to where we
apparent that
were
in
the
terms of
1990s at
economic and
30%.
national security,
So the question really
just
today
how
is,
dependent and
are we
vulnerable
seeing the right level
we
of
are on
investment
semiconductors.
to make a return?
Yes, we
to the
rely
market
on these
share that
chips
we
for
think is
consumer
important.
electronics and cars.
My guess is we're going
but
to
they're
hear
also
both
in
from the
just
private
about
sector
every
investment that's already been made and the robust response to the programs. We're going to hear that the investment wants to be in the United States. So I think we can't emphasize enough how important it was to bring this manufacturing back. Consumers saw car prices raise as much as 40%. Truck manufacturers like PACCAR
We have an
in my
emergency in
state
semiconductors.
weren't able to get semiconductors, weren't literally able to ship product. Supply chain resiliency
That's a first.
also
I
created
believe
deadlocks for other industries and impacted national security. So I hope that
I think our first
we will
witness
all
is a
work together on
semiconductor.
better tools for the future. I'll have some questions about that in the question and answer
You
period.
done?
But the semiconductor
No.
industry today is facing a gap of 67,000 people by 2030. That's just semiconductors. So I know we in my state, as relates just to STEM, have a gap of 60,000 workers across various sectors, not just semiconductors. So clearly, we
As I
need
was
to make
saying.
the investments in the scholarship programs and in the STEM apprentices and workforce for tomorrow to realize all this investment that is now being made in the United States of America. So welcome to our witnesses.
With
I'll
great
turn it over to my
trepidation.
colleague, Senator Cruz, for his opening statement.
I observed that just about
Thank you, Madam
every
Chair, for
advanced
calling
weapon
this
system in our
important
military
hearing. And welcome
rely
Secretary
on
Raimondo,
semiconductors,
Director
and most of them are not made in the United
Panchanathan,
States.
for both being here today.
Recognizing this, there was a
Semiconductors
flurry of
drive our
legislative
modern
activity to
economy.
onshore
From cell
and
phones and cars to
nearshore
supercomputers
semiconductor
and medical
manufacturing last
devices.
Congress. These integrated circuits have
Culminating
been
in the
integrated
Chips
into
and
our daily
Science Act.
lives. Parts of this
Before
law, like the
2020,
FABS
however,
Act, which I
when we
co-sponsored and
suddenly
enthusiastically
couldn't get enough
supported,
of them,
provided
most
tax
of us
credits to
probably didn't
incentivize
realize
chip
just how
investments
big a
in the
role
United
these
States.
chips play. The final bill,
It
however,
became
also
very quickly
included a
apparent
whopping
that in terms of
$52
economic
billion
and national security,
in direct subsidies from taxpayers,
just how dependent
that,
and vulnerable
in my view,
we
would
are
predictably
on
lead to government bureaucrats picking winners
Yes,
and losers.
we rely on these chips
At
for
worst,
consumer
this kind of
electronics and
industrial
cars,
policy
but
can
they're
be
also
rife
in
with
just
political
about every
interference and waste. And even at best, it is often done poorly and inefficiently. That's why I ultimately voted against the bill, despite it containing a number of things I strongly support. We're already seeing a number of these concerns realized. When I speak to companies in Texas, many of them bemoan how the Biden administration has imposed
We have an emergency in
extraneous
semiconductors.
non-statutory conditions on receipt of taxpayer support.
That's a first.
Commerce isn't just
I
asking
believe-
if you've got the best technology or the cheapest manufacturing process. Instead, the bureaucrats want to know if you have proper
I think
plans
our
to
first
subsidize
witness is a
child care
semiconductor.
or to support affordable housing. Have you adequately engaged with labor unions? Are your suppliers sufficiently diverse?
No.
None of these topics are critical to the fundamental question of whether you can build the best chip at the lowest price. Maybe these issues are relevant, but does anyone think that officials in Washington know better than the engineers and the investors behind these projects? Moreover, none of these strings were included in the law, but they've nonetheless been attached by
As
the
I was
Biden
saying.
administration to try to enact by regulations things that they don't have the votes to pass through Congress. As many Commerce Committee Republicans noted in the letter that we sent to Secretary Raimondo
With
in
great
March,
trepidation,
this attempt at backdoor progressive social policy
I observed that just
will
about
only serve
every
to make
advanced
domestic
weapon
chip
system in our
production more
military,
expensive, less
rely
competitive,
on semiconductors,
and more
and most
reliant
of
on
them are not
taxpayer
made in the United
subsidies
States.
over private investment. Recognizing this,
More
there was a
recently,
flurry of legislative
an area of major
activity to
concern
onshore
has
and
been the
onerous
nearshore
environmental
semiconductor
requirements under
manufacturing
NEPA
last Congress,
and the potential for this
culminating
environmental
in the
process
Chips
law
and Science
to
Act.
drive up compliance
Parts of this
costs
law, like the
for
FABS Act,
manufacturers,
which I
and
co-sponsored and
significantly
enthusiastically
slow new
supported.
construction, provided tax
That's why
credits to
Senator Mark
incentivize
Kelly and
chip
I led a
investments in the
bipartisan
United
amendment
States. To the National Defense
The
Authorization
final bill,
Act,
however, also
to
included
exclude
a
from
whopping
NEPA the
$52
overwhelming
billion
majority of chips-funded
in direct
semiconductor
subsidies from
projects.
taxpayers.
Secretary Raimondo, I want to thank
in
you
my
for your
view,
support
would
on that
predictably
effort
lead to government
and for
bureaucrats picking winners
explicitly
and
endorsing
losers.
our amendment during your House
At
testimony
worst, this
last
kind of
month.
industrial
policy can be rife
Secretary
with political
Raimondo, we have
interference
also had good
and
conversations
waste,
about the
and
importance
even
of
at
a strong
best, it
U.S.
is often
chip
done
industry.
poorly and
We
inefficiently.
both want to see America's
That's why I
innovative
ultimately voted
capacity
against the bill,
soar,
despite it
and
containing
we
a number
agree
of
that
things I
using these
strongly
taxpayer
support.
funds appropriately
We're already seeing
is
a number of
immensely
these
challenging.
concerns realized. Fortunately,
When I
states like
speak to
Texas
companies in Texas,
are showing
many
us
of
a path
them
forward
bemoan
here. How the Biden
Texas boasted
administration
an
has
established
imposed
ecosystem of
extraneous,
innovators,
non-statutory
world-class
conditions,
universities,
as
low
a-
taxes,
and
on
a permissive
receipt of
regulatory
taxpayer support
environment that enables
Commerce
companies
isn't
to
just
grow
asking if
and to
you've got
thrive.
the best technology or
As
the
a
cheapest
result, we have already
manufacturing
attracted
process.
$61 billion
Instead, the
in
bureaucrats
private
want to know
new
if you have proper
semiconductor
plans to
investment
subsidize child
and created
care
over
or to
8,000 new
support
jobs,
affordable
making
housing.
Texas
Have
the
you
center of
adequately
U.S.
engaged with
semiconductor
labor unions?
manufacturing?
Texas
Are your
has a
suppliers
storied history in the invention
sufficiently
and production
diverse?
of semiconductors.
None
And
of
we're
these
proud
topics
to help lead
are
America's
critical to the
semiconductor
fundamental question
renaissance.
of whether
And I
you
would
can build the
encourage the
best
Commerce
chip
Department
at the lowest
to
price.
look to the model in
Maybe these
Texas and
issues
to
are
see
relevant.
how to
But
make
does
this
anyone
broader
think that
effort more
officials in
successful?
Washington know better than
Finally,
the
it's
engineers
worth noting
and the
that the
investors
other half
behind
of
these
the
projects?
Chips and Sciences Act.
Moreover, none of these strings were included in the
Director
law.
Panchanathan,
But they've nonetheless
the
been
NSF does
attached by the
substantial
Biden
work
administration
advancing basic
to
science
try to enact
that
by
helps expand our
regulations things
scientific
that they don't
knowledge.
have the votes
And that's important
to
work.
pass through Congress. But I'm deeply concerned over what
As many
appears to be
Commerce
the
Committee
increasing
Republicans noted in the
politicization
letter that we
of
sent to
NSF-funded
Secretary
science
Raimondo in March,
and the feedback
this
loop
attempt at
and the
backdoor
scientific
progressive
stagnation this
social
is creating.
policy
I'm
will only
especially
serve to
disturbed
make
by
domestic
recent
chip production
reports
more
that NSF
expensive,
has
less
to the
competitive,
tunes of tens
and
of
more
millions
reliant
of
on
dollars
taxpayer
been
subsidies
funding
over private
projects on
investment.
how to counter, quote,
More recently,
populist
an area of
narratives
major concern
and
has
so-called
been the onerous
quote,
environmental
mis- and
requirements under
disinformation,
NEPA,
which
and the
seems like
potential
little
for this
more
environmental
than
process
funding
law
the
to
pseudoscience
drive up
of
compliance
censorship.
costs for
So I
manufacturers.
look forward to hearing from both our
and
witnesses
significantly
today on how they are
slow new
implementing
construction.
this very important law.
That's why Senator Mark
Taxpayers
Kelly and I
have put
led a
lot of skin in
bipartisan
this
amendment
game,
to the National
and we
Defense
all owe it to them
Authorization
to
Act
get it right. To exclude from NEPA the overwhelming
Thank
majority
you.
of chips-funded
We'll start now with
semiconductor
Secretary
projects.
Raimondo.
Secretary
Welcome.
Raimondo, I want to thank
can't
you for your
imagine
support
what a
on
busy
that
time
effort
it is for you and the
for
organization that
explicitly
is
endorsing
implementing
our
this
amendment
act.
during your
We
House
appreciate your
testimony
time
last
being here
month.
today.
It is my
Secretary
pleasure to be
Raimondo,
here
we have
today.
also
Thank you,
had
Chairwoman, and
good
thank you, Ranking Member
conversations
Cruz
about the
and members
importance
of
of
the
a
committee.
strong
Thank you for the
U.S. chip
opportunity
industry.
to come talk
We
to you
both
about
want to
how
see
we're
America's
implementing this
innovative
historic
capacity
legislation.
soar.
And of course, I'm so pleased
And we
to be
agree
here
that using these
with
taxpayer
Punch, a
funds
fantastic
appropriately
NSF director.
is immensely
I
challenging.
do want to begin
Fortunately,
by taking
states
just
like
a second
Texas
to share
are
my
showing us a path
condolences
forward
with
here.
Senator Feinstein's
Texas
family.
boasts an established ecosystem of
She was a pioneer
innovators,
and a role model for
world-class
so many women
universities,
like
low
me, so
taxes,
I wanted to
and
just
a
take a second
permissive
to say that.
regulatory environment
Because of
that
your
enables
hard work,
companies to
in
grow
large part due
and
to
to
you,
thrive.
Chairwoman
As a result, we have already attracted $61 billion in private new semiconductor investments and created over 8,000 new jobs, making Texas
in our
the
domestic
center of U.S. semiconductor manufacturing.
and
Texas has a storied history in the invention and production of semiconductors.
Concur. This
and
is
we're
an enormous
proud to help lead America's semiconductor renaissance. And I would encourage the Commerce Department to look to the model in Texas and to see how to make this broader effort more successful.
We have since received
Finally,
more than
it's worth
500
noting
statements
that the
of
other half
interest
of the
from
Chips and
42
Sciences Act,
states, from manufacturers large and
Director
small.
Panchanathan,
They outline proposals
NSF
to
does
manufacture
substantial work
chips and
advancing
the relevant
basic
equipment
science.
and materials
It helps
here
expand
in
our
the United
scientific
States.
knowledge.
Very
And that's
importantly,
important work.
of the 500
But I'm deeply
statements of
concerned
interest,
over
we
what appears
received
to be the
over
increasing
100
politicization
applications
of
for
NSF-funded
pre-applications.
science and the
In the
feedback
last 2
loop
weeks,
and the scientific
we finalized
stagnation
and put
this
out
has
the
created.
guardrails to protect
I'm
US
especially
government
disturbed by
investments
recent
and bolster
reports
our
that
national
NSF
security.
has, to
We're
the
also
tunes of
developing our
tens of
CHIPS
millions of
R&D
dollars,
program
been
to meet
funding
the unique
projects on how to
challenges of building
counter,
a
quote,
sustained
populist
R&D
narratives
to manufacturing
and
pipeline.
so-called, quote,
The
mis- and
centerpiece of
disinformation,
these efforts is the
which
National
seems like little
Semiconductor
more
Technology
than
Center,
funding the
or
pseudoscience of
NSTC,
censorship.
which we expect to
So I
launch
look forward to
this
hearing from
fall.
both our witnesses today
A
on
great
how they
deal
are
of
implementing
activity
this very
since
important law.
About a year ago,
The
that the bill was
taxpayers have
passed.
put a lot of skin
And
in
of
this
course,
game,
all of that research
and
and
we all owe it
development
to
work
them to
we're
get it
doing
right.
in collaboration with the NSF.
Thank you.
The Chips and
We'll
Science
start
Act
now with Secretary Raimondo.
authorized
Welcome.
2 new programs.
I can't
the
imagine
Tech
what a
Hub
busy time it is
Initiative
for
and
you and the
Recompete,
organization
which we
that
are
is implementing this
administering
act.
through
We
EDA.
appreciate your time being here today.
We've received
It is my pleasure
400
to be here today. Thank you,
applications
Chairwoman,
for the Tech
and
Hub
thank you, Ranking Member
grants.
Cruz
It's
and members of the
unbelievable.
committee. Thank
I've
you for the
never seen
opportunity
anything
to
more
come talk to you about how we're
oversubscribed.
implementing
Later
this
this
historic
fall,
legislation.
EDA
And of
will
course, I'm so
launch,
pleased to
we'll
be
make
here
the announcements
with
of the
Punch,
Tech
a
Hub
fantastic
designations.
NSF director.
And
I
then
do want to
also,
begin
by
by
taking just a second to share my condolences with Senator Feinstein's family. Similarly, we're investing $200 million in the Recompete pilot program
just take a
to
second to
spur
say that.
economic activity in
Because of your
geographically
hard
diverse
work
and
and in large part
economically
due to you,
distressed
Chairwoman,
communities
can't
across
well
the
and
country.
bipartisan support of the committee.
Thanks
the Commerce
to your
Department
work in the
now
Chips and
has
Science
the honor,
Act, we are making
responsibility, and,
historically bold
to
and
invest
strategic
$50 billion
investments that will
in our
strengthen
domestic
our national
semiconductor
and economic
manufacturing
security.
and
If we're
research and
successful,
development.
when we're successful, the United
And
States
I
will become
concur,
the
this is an
premier
enormous
destination
responsibility
in the world
and a massive
where
amount of
new
taxpayer
chip
dollars.
architectures can be invented
We
in our
opened
research
the
labs,
application process in
designed
February,
for applications,
just a few months after
manufactured at
after you passed
scale
the bill.
by
We have
well-trained,
since received
well-paid
more than
American
500
workers
statements of
and
interest
packaged
from 42
in the United
states.
From manufacturers large
so
and
it's a
small.
tremendous
They
piece of work
outline
that we
proposals
have,
to
great
manufacture
progress
chips
since
and
the
the
bill was
relevant
passed.
equipment
Of
and
course, we'll
materials
answer any
here
questions
in the
related
United
to that.
States.
Very
Very
importantly,
importantly,
just to
of
mention
the 500 statements of interest,
how
we've
stressed
received over
we were
100
about the possibility
or
of
pre-applications.
a government shutdown.
In the last
and
2
how
weeks,
troubling it was to come
we
within
finalized
hours
and put
of
out the
that shutdown.
guardrails
So
to
thank you
protect
for
U.S.
working
government
hard to make sure that
investments
that did
and
not
bolster
happen.
our national
It
security.
goes without saying,
We're also
China,
developing our
Russia,
CHIPS
Iran aren't
R&D
shutting
program.
down.
The
To
work
meet
we're
the
doing in the
unique
CHIPS Act
challenges
is
of
building
essential
a
to our national
sustained
security,
R&D
and any
to
shutdown would be
manufacturing pipeline.
massively
The
disruptive to our
centerpiece
ability
of
to
these efforts
stay on the
is
pace
the
that we're
National
on
Semiconductor
in implementing
Technology
this very
Center,
important work.
or the NSTC,
With that, I will
which we
open for
expect to
questions or
launch
turn it over
this
to
fall.
Punch.
Thank
So
you.
a great deal of
Director
activity
Panchanathan,
since
thank you for being here.
about a year ago that the bill
Thank
was
you so
passed.
much.
And of
Thanks,
course,
Secretary.
all of that
Chair,
research and
and
development
Ranking
work
Member
we're doing
Cruz,
in collaboration
members of
with
the
the
Commerce
NSF. The Chips
It's
and
great to
Science
be with
Act
all of you
also,
today, particularly
also
with
authorized
a colleague,
2 new
a
programs,
friend,
the Tech Hub
Secretary
Initiative
Raimondo.
and Recompete,
Before I begin,
which we are
I
administering
would like
through
to extend my
EDA.
deepest condolences to all of
We've
you for the
received
loss of your colleague,
400
Senator
applications
Dianne
for the
Feinstein.
Tech Hub grants.
Not only
It's
was Senator
unbelievable.
Feinstein,
I've never
an
seen
incredible
anything
leader
more
and
oversubscribed.
trailblazer. She was
Later
also a
this
champion
fall,
for science.
EDA will launch,
And NSF
will make the
is grateful
announcements
for
of
her
the Tech Hub
service to the
designations.
nation. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the National Science Foundation's implementation of the CHIPS and Science Act and how the agency is building upon decades of successful investments in science, engineering, and technology
to spur economic activity in geographically diverse and economically distressed
For more than 7
communities across
decades,
the country.
NSF has been critical to powering our economy,
Thanks to your work, the
transforming our
CHIPS and
quality of
Science
life,
Act, we are
and securing
making
our national
historically
defense,
bold
and yes,
and
the Nobel
strategic
Prizes yesterday
investments
and today,
that will
and more
strengthen
to
our
come.
national and
Many of the
economic
technological
security.
advances benefiting
If
the
we're
nation
successful,
today,
when we're
such as
successful,
artificial
the United
intelligence,
States
quantum
will become
information
the
science,
premier
and biotechnology
destination
are
in the
rooted
world
in sustained
where
NSF
new chip
investments over
architectures
many
can be
decades.
invented
However,
in our
we
research
currently
labs,
face intense
designed
global
for
competition
applications,
in the race to develop these
manufactured
technologies
at scale
and to
by
train the
well-trained,
workforce
well-paid
of the future.
American workers
NSF's
and
ability to
packaged
enable
in the United
scientific
States.
breakthroughs and accelerate
So it's a
technological developments
tremendous
is
piece of
central
work
to our
that we
economic
have. Great
and national
progress since
security
the bill
and
has
our
passed.
continued
Of
global
course, we'll
leadership.
answer any questions related to
With the
that.
passage of the CHIPS
Before I
and Science
close,
Act of
just to
2022,
mention,
Congress put in place a
how
roadmap for
stressed
meeting this challenge
we
while
were
spurring
about
innovation
the
in
possibility
communities
of,
across our country.
a government
Over the
shutdown
past year,
and
and with the
troubling it
increased
was to come
appropriations
within
in FY
hours of that
2023,
shutdown. So
NSF
thank
has
you
been
for
able
working
to make
hard to make sure
significant
that
progress
did not
in
happen.
implementing the CHIPS
It
and
goes
Science
without
Act.
saying,
The agency
China,
has moved
Russia,
quickly
Iran
to
aren't
launch
shutting down.
new
The work
opportunities
we're doing in
for
the CHIPS
innovation,
Act is
implement
essential
research
for
security
national
measures
security, and any
for
shutdown
safeguarding
would be
taxpayers'
massively
investments, and
disruptive
engage
to our
talent
ability
and
to
inspire
stay on the pace
STEM
that we're
leaders
on
of
in implementing this very
The
important
NSF regional
work.
innovation
So with
engines
that, I
will
will
catalyze
open for
new
questions or
businesses
turn it over to
and
Panch.
economic growth
Thank
in
you.
diverse
Director
regions of
Panchanathan,
America.
thank you for being
When the
here.
NSF Engines program Thank you so released much, its first funding opportunity last year,
Ranking
we
Member
received
Cruz
nearly
and members of the
700 concept papers.
It's
from
great to be with
every
all of you
state
today, particularly
and
with
US territory
a colleague,
of our nation.
a friend.
In May,
Secretary
NSF
Raimondo.
announced the first
Before I
ever
begin,
NSF Engine Development
I would like
Awards,
to extend my
consisting of
deepest
44
condolences
unique teams
to all of you
spanning
for the loss of
46
your
states
colleague,
and US territories.
Senator Dianne
Then in
Feinstein.
August, NSF announced
Not only
16
was Senator
finalists
Feinstein
for the
an
first
incredible leader
full-scale
and
NSF
trailblazer,
engines.
she was also a
Through
champion
these
for
two
science.
tracks, NSF
And
plans to
NSF
have
is
invested nearly
grateful for
200
her
million
service
in
to
regional
the nation.
innovation throughout
Thank
our
you for the
country by
opportunity
the
to
end of this
discuss
calendar
the National
year.
Science
I
Foundation's
cannot
implementation
understate how critical
of the
it is
CHIPS and
that
Science
we engage
Act
every
and
part
how
of our
the
nation
agency is
in
building
these
upon
efforts.
decades
NSF has
of
been
successful
intentional in
investments
implementing
in science,
new opportunities
engineering, and technology,
expanding existing
to ensure
initiatives
that the
to
United
engage
States remains the
everyone
global leader
who wants to
in
participate
innovation.
in STEM.
For
In
more
every
than 7
state,
decades,
across every
NSF has
geographic
been
boundary,
critical to powering
drawing
our
the full
economy,
diversity,
transforming
of
our
nation.
quality of life,
CHIPS and
and
Science
securing
Act
our national
included
defense,
requirement
and yes, the Nobel
that NSF
Prizes
grow its
yesterday
investment
and today,
in
and
EBSCO
more to
jurisdictions.
come. Over
Many
time,
of the technological
I'm very pleased to
advances
report
benefiting the
that
nation
NSF
today,
has
such as
met
artificial
and even
intelligence, quantum
exceeded
information science,
the EBSCO
and
targets
biotechnology
in
are
the CHIPS
rooted
and Science
in
Act
sustained
of
NSF
FY23
investments.
over
It
many
is also
decades.
critical,
However,
that we safeguard
we
these
currently
investments
face
and take
intense
steps to
global
address
competition
research security
in the race
while
to develop
also
these
cultivating
technologies
vibrant
and
international
to train the
partnerships.
workforce
NSF plays
of
a
the
leading
future.
role in federal
NSF's
efforts
ability to
address
enable
research security,
scientific
and we are
breakthroughs
expanding the
and
agency's
accelerate
capabilities and
technological
competencies
developments
is
to protect
central to our
taxpayer
economic
investments.
and
The CHIPS
national
and Science
security
Act
and our
includes
continued
valuable
global
provisions
leadership that will help NSF
With the
build the
passage of the
capacity
CHIPS and
of the
Science Act
research
of
community
2022,
to make Congress put in place a roadmap for meeting this challenge while spurring innovation
of our
in
national
communities
research
across our
enterprise.
country. Equally
Over the
important to
past
the
year,
nation's
and with the
competitiveness
increased appropriations
is
in
NSF's
FY
commitment
2023
to funding
NSF has been
exploratory
able to make
based
significant
research
progress
that creates
in
new
implementing
knowledge
the CHIPS
and
and Science
seeds the
Act
industries. The
of
agency has
tomorrow.
moved quickly, for example, to launch
many
new
opportunities
AI
for
advancements,
innovation
making news
implement
today.
research
We
security
celebrate
measures,
them.
for
Both the
safeguarding
innovative
taxpayers,
products and the
investments,
talent
and
that is
engaged
developing
talent
them
and inspire
were catalyzed
the STEM leaders
by
of
NSF's
tomorrow.
continued investment. The NSF regional
Over many
innovation
decades,
engines
even
will catalyze
through
new
AI
businesses
ventures
and economic growth
Likewise,
in diverse
the
regions
technological
of
advancements
America.
of tomorrow
When the
will be
NSF
born
Engines
out of
program
today's
released
investments.
its first
In just
funding
the past 3
opportunity
years,
last year,
NSF
we received
has established
nearly 700 national AI research
from
institutes
every
in
state
partnership
and
with
US
federal agencies and industry.
of our nation.
The $500 million investment
NSF announced the
reaches
first ever
almost
NSF
into
Engine
every
Development
state,
Awards,
supporting
consisting
cutting-edge
of
research
44
that is
unique
applying
teams
AI to
spanning
key economic
46
sectors
states and US
like agriculture,
territories.
weather, and public
Then in
health.
August,
NSF announced ability to generate more breakthroughs for the first more innovations, and to do so faster than ever before. These critical to keeping our country as a global leader invested nearly $200 million in regional innovation throughout our country successful implementation of the CHIPS and Science Act understate how critical it is that we engage every part of our nation in these efforts. And enabling NSF has been intentional in implementing new opportunities, innovation, and expanding existing initiatives to engage everyone who wants to participate in STEM. In every state, for the opportunity, every geographic boundary, drawing the full diversity
Thank you, Director.
of our nation. The Chips and
Colleagues know
Science
that a vote
Act
has started. We're
included
gonna
a
have a couple of
requirement
votes this
that
afternoon,
NSF
so
grow its
just
investment
ask you
in
to use
EBSCO
your discretion
jurisdictions
where you are in
over
the queue
time.
to go back
I'm
and
very
forth and
pleased to
try to
report
maximize
that
time. I'm
NSF
gonna
has
turn it
met
over to my
and
colleague,
even
Senator Schatz,
exceeded
and go vote,
the
and then
EBSCO
come back, and
targets
you'll
in the Chips
chair
and
the
Science
meeting and
Act
go to
of
Senator Cruz after that.
FY23. It is also critical
Thank you,
that
Chair.
we safeguard these
Ranking Member,
investments
Director,
and take
Panchanathan.
steps to address research
Thank
security
you for being
while
here. I
also
wanna follow up
cultivating
on the
vibrant
conversation we had
international
earlier
partnerships.
this year.
NSF plays a
I know
leading
that you
role
made
in
$6.5
federal
million
efforts to address
available
research
in fiscal
security,
year
and we are
23
expanding the
for the
agency's
continued
capabilities and
development of the
competencies
30-meter
to
telescope.
protect
What are your
taxpayer
plans
investments.
for
The Chips and Science Act
continuing the
includes
funding and the
valuable
work to design
provisions that
TMT,
will help NSF
in
build the
fiscal
capacity
24?
of the research community
Thank you very
to
much,
make
Senator Schatz,
and I really enjoyed decisions and strengthen the security of our national research enterprise.
the great state of Hawaii
Equally important to the
recently.
nation's competitiveness,
We launched the
is
telescope.
NSF's commitment
As you know, the
to
solar
funding
telescope in Maui,
exploratory-based
which is
research
the world's
that creates new
largest
knowledge
solar
and seeds
telescope.
the industries of
And I'm
tomorrow.
very proud
For example,
that we have it
many of
located
the
in
AI
Maui. We're doing
advancements
great
making news
science.
today, we
To
celebrate
your specific
them.
question,
Both
I'm
the
happy to
innovative
tell you, as
products
you said,
and
just
the
last
talent
week,
that is developing
NSF
them
made a $6.5 million
catalyzed
award
by
to the
NSF's
Giant
continued
Measurement Telescope
for GMT
over many
and a
decades,
$6.5 million
even through
award to the
AI
30-meter telescope
Winters
international
Likewise,
organization. The technological
TMT,
advancements
to
of
continue
tomorrow
development
will be
and
born
reduce
out of
risk
today's
on
investments.
crucial
In just the
optical
past 3
and
years,
mechanical components.
NSF
I wanna
has
tell you
established 25
that there is a process that we
national
take
AI
as we
research
embark
institutes
on
in
large
partnership
awards.
with federal
And this
agencies and
includes
industry. Not only the
$500
billion
billion
investment
decadal survey
reaches
recommendations
into
that
every
came,
state,
consultations
supporting
to the
cutting-edge
scientific
research
community
that is applying
and
AI
advisory
to key
committees,
economic sectors,
as well as our mathematical,
agriculture,
physical
weather,
sciences
and public
directorate,
health.
making
NSF's
sure that
ability
we
to
are
generate more
prioritizing these
breakthroughs
investments
and foster more
working with our
innovations,
national
and to
science
do so
board.
faster than ever
And so,
before,
now
is
we are
critical to
investing
keeping our
in the
country
design
as a
and
global
development
leader in
phase.
STEM.
And that
With
was
the
this
support of this
investment.
committee, so we
And
have plans in
Congress.
terms of
And
how
to
to
continue
continue successful
the
implementation
final design
of the
review
Chips and
and then
Science
the
Act.
investment. So
NSF
that's
is
23.
strengthening our
You're-
national
you're mostly
and
talking about
economic
23. So what are your
security
plans for 24?
and enabling.
In the 24, we have
Quote
budgeted again to continue with this process.
Innovation,
And we have asked for
anywhere,
$30 million
of investment
and
so that we will be able to move
everywhere
these projects
across our
forward
nation.
as these
Thank you
review
for the
processes
opportunity
happen.
to testify
And at
before
the
you
same
today.
time, I
Thank you,
would like to place this in front of
Director.
Congress.
Colleagues know that a
in the
vote has
Chips and
started. We're going
Science
to have a couple of
Act,
votes this
the science
afternoon, so
provisions
I just
where
ask you to use your discretion where you are in the queue to go back and
not
forth and try to
appropriations yet.
maximize time.
We need
I'm
that
gonna
also in
turn it
place
over
so
to
that
my
we
colleague,
might
Senator Schatz,
be in the
and go
vanguard
vote
of
and then come
innovation
back
and scientific
we'll
discovery,
chair the
for
meeting
which
and go to Senator Cruz
instrumentation
after that.
like TMT and GMT are
Thank
very
you, Chair,
important
Ranking Member,
as we think
Director
about the future.
Panchanathan. Thank you. Now, talk to me about construction
for
funds
being
for
here.
25.
I wanna follow up
Obviously,
on
you're
the
talking about
conversation we had
design.
earlier this
Where
year.
are we on
I know that you
construction?
made $6.5 million available in fiscal
and
year
can we work
23
together on
for
the
the
pathway?
continued
I understand
development
there
of the 30-meter
a lot of it is
telescope.
contingent.
What
You
are
have
your
Astro
plans
2020,
for
you have the scientific review process.
funding
We
and
obviously
the work
don't
to
have it
design
squared away on the
TMT,
Hawaii side of this.
in fiscal
So,
24.
but we have to move in parallel.
Thank you very
paths
much,
in
Senator
case
Schatz,
everything
and I
comes
really
together. So where are
enjoyed
you with 25
talking to
and
you
construction money for
and
ELT?
visiting. Again, thank you
great
for
state of
that. And
Hawaii
yes, you are right.
recently.
We are going through the
We
process
launched the
that we
telescope,
typically go
as
through
you know,
in
the
major
solar
research
telescope in
facilities
Maui,
instrumentation,
which is
and so
the
we are looking
world's
at the 24,
largest solar
25,
telescope.
and beyond in terms of
And
what
I'm
is the
very
right
proud
positioning
that we
for
have
the
it
request to be
located
made
in
for
Maui, doing
the
great
construction
science.
project. Right now, we
To
have
your
to go through the
specific
final
question,
design
I'm happy
review.
to tell
And
you,
as you
as you
said
said,
rightly,
just
we are
last
working
week,
with the state of
NSF
Hawaii
made a
to make sure that
$6.5
we are
million
positioning
award
the appropriate
Giant
investments
Measurement Telescope
in a
for
way
GMT
that they can
and a
be
$6.5 million
sequenced at the
award to
right
the
time.
30-meter telescope
So it is our, we are
international
still working
organization,
through the 25
TMT,
and we will
to
be
continue
working
development
development
and reduce
to think
risk
through when
on
the appropriate
crucial
time is for
optical
putting in
and
the
mechanical
construction
components.
request. But the
I
final
wanna tell
design
you
review has also
that
go through.
there is a process
as we are
that we
thinking
take
about how we are moving
as we
forward
embark
in this
on
process.
large
And we'll be working
awards.
closely with the National
And this
Science Board on
includes
this.
not
And
only the
Senator,
Astro
as we have always
2020
done,
decadal
we will
survey,
keep your staff
recommendations that
closely
came,
consultations with the
and,
scientific community,
closely engaged
and advisory
to ensure
that you're getting all as well as our mathematical physical sciences
very much,
directorate,
Senator Cruz.
making sure that we are prioritizing these investments,
Thank you,
working
Mr.
with
Chair.
our National
Secretary
Science
Raimondo.
Board.
The
And so
National
now we are
Environmental
investing
Policy Act, or
in the
NEPA.
design and development phase, and that was this investment. So we have plans in
NEPA
terms of
reviews
how
are
do we
currently
move from
required
here
for
to
CHIPS
the final
grants,
design
and that could
review
lengthen
and then
project
the investment.
timelines
So
by
that's
2 years or
23
more from the date
that
the
you're-
department
you're mostly
decides
talking about
to
23. So what
start
are
an
your plans for
environmental
24?
impact statement.
In the 24, we have
Some
budgeted
NEPA
again
reports aren't
to
completed for
continue
7
with this
years or
process.
longer.
And we have asked for $30
When you
million
were
of
asked about
investment
hurdles
so that we
posed
will
by
be
NEPA
able
to
to
CHIPS
move these
projects in a
projects
House
forward
hearing last
as
month,
these review processes happen.
you pointed out
And
there's
at the same
quote,
time,
there's currently a
I
bipartisan
would like to
amendment
place
to
this
the
in front
Defense
of Congress.
Authorization Act,
You know
which
that
would
in
help
the
a
CHIPS and
lot.
Science Act,
So we're
the
going to do
science
everything we
provisions
can with our
where
team to help streamline NEPA and move it as
authorizations,
quickly as
not
is prudent.
appropriations yet.
But if
We need
Congress
that
could pass
also
the
in place so
amendment, I
that we
think it's the
might
Cruz-Kelly
be in
amendment,
the
the
vanguard of
Authorization
innovation
Act,
and scientific
would help
discovery,
us a lot
for which
to move faster.
instrumentation like TNT
As you know,
and
that
GMT are
bipartisan
really
amendment
important
passed the
as we think
Senate with
about the future.
overwhelming
Thank you.
bipartisan
Now talk to me
support,
about
but it is not
construction
yet
funds
law.
for
It still has to
25.
pass
Obviously,
the
you're talking about
House
design.
and
Where
ultimately
are
be
we
signed
on
into law by the
construction
President.
and
Could you briefly describe
and
the
can we work
benefits the
together
amendment
on
would
the pathway?
provide
I understand there
as
a lot
a
of
word
it's
of
contingent. You have
encouragement to the
Astro
House and the
2020,
White
you have a
House
scientific
to
review
make
process.
it law?
We obviously don't have it squared away on the Hawaii side of this.
Yes,
So,
thank you,
but
and
we
thank
have
you
to
for your
move in
leadership
parallel
on
paths in
that.
case
As
everything
you
comes
say,
together. So where are you
each
with
of these projects,
25
if
and
they receive
construction
federal
money
money,
for
would be
ELT?
subject to NEPA.
Again, thank you for that.
which
And
could-
yes, you are right. We
could
are
take
going
up
through
to
the
years.
process
We do not
that we
have
typically
years.
go
These are
through in the major
national
research
security
facilities
imperative
instrumentation.
projects,
And
which
so
is
we are
why
looking
I,
at the 24,
again, thank you for your
25, and
leadership.
beyond
What we
in
are
terms of
doing,
what is the right positioning
we've built
for the
a
request
team
to be made
on the
for
CHIPS team
the
in the
construction
Commerce
project.
Department
Right now, we have
just
to go
to
through the
focus
final
on
design
permitting,
review. And as
to
you said
help
rightly,
companies,
we are working
help
with the state of
states
Hawaii to make sure
streamline
that
the
we are
process,
positioning
accelerate
the
the
appropriate
process within the
investments
existing
in a way
statute.
that they can be
Let me be
sequenced
clear.
at the
We
right
don't
time.
want to,
So it is we are still working through the
environmental
25
concerns
and we will be working through
matter.
the 26
We are not
budgets
in any
to
way
think through
suggesting
when
that we
the
should do
appropriate
anything
time
that
is for
hurts the
putting in the
environment or is
construction request.
unsustainable.
But the final
That
design
being
review has
said,
also
we
go
do
through
need
as we are
to, which
thinking
your
about how we are
amendment would
moving
do,
forward in this
streamline
process.
the
And we'll be
process,
working closely
speed
with the
the
National
process,
Science Board
make
on
the
this.
process more
And
efficient
Senator,
and
as you've
user-friendly.
always done, we will keep your
Interestingly,
staff
earlier today, I was on the phone
informed
with
and
members of the
closely
House
engaged to ensure that you're getting
on
all
this
the answers
exact
that you need.
issue,
Thank you
encouraging
very
them
much, Senator
to
Cruz.
do their own, take your lead
Thank you, Mr.
and
Chair.
pass something
Secretary
in the House.
Raimondo,
My
the
view is
National
it's
Environmental
essential.
Policy
We're going to
Act,
do
or
everything
NEPA.
we can. We have a team. We're working on it. But without the legislation,
NEPA reviews
it
are
is
currently
very
required for CHIPS grants, and
Well,
that
that's
could
very
lengthen
helpful. Thank
project
you.
timelines by
Let me
2 years or
turn
more
to the
from
topic
date
of
the
spectrum,
department
something both
decides
you and I care a
to
lot
start
about.
an environmental impact
We all
statement.
know that the United States
Some
needs
NEPA
more
reports
commercial
aren't completed
access
for
to
7
mid-band
years or
spectrum.
longer. Recent
When
studies
you were
project
asked
that
about
U.S.
hurdles
mobile
posed by
traffic
NEPA to
to
CHIPS
increase
projects in a
more than
House
2.5
hearing last
times
month.
over the next 5 years.
You pointed
almost
out there's
sixfold in the next
there's
10
currently a
years.
bipartisan amendment to the
We need
Defense
a real
Authorization Act, which
mid-band
would help a
spectrum
lot.
pipeline so that the
So we're
U.S.
gonna do
can
everything we
dominate
can with our
5G
team to help
and not
streamline
fall behind
NEPA
our
and move it
adversaries
as quickly as is prudent.
Unfortunately,
But if
access
Congress
to
could
mid-band
pass the
spectrum
amendment,
has
I think
become
it's the
almost
Cruz-Kelly
impossible to come
amendment, the
by
Authorization
because
Act,
so much of the nation's
would help us
spectrum
a
is under
lot
the
to move
control
faster.
of federal agencies.
As you know,
who
that
are resistant
bipartisan
to
amendment
sharing. Passed the Senate with
The
overwhelming
Defense Department
bipartisan
recently
support, but it is not
completed
yet
its
law. It
report
still has to pass
on opening
the House
access to spectrum in the
and
lower
ultimately be
3
signed into law by
gigahertz
the
band,
President, and gave it to your department.
Could you
at the end of
briefly
last
describe
week.
the benefits the
The
amendment
report has not
would
been made
provide,
public,
as
but
a
according
word
to
of
leaks, the
encouragement to
report
House
does
and the
not
White
support
House
sharing,
to
let alone
make it
allowing
law.
full power 5G use in the band. Secretary
Yes,
Raimondo,
thank you,
you
and
and I
thank you
had a
for your
very productive
leadership
call
on that.
yesterday, and during
As
that
you
call,
say,
you
each
committed
of
to
these
sharing the
projects,
report
if they
with me
receive
and
federal
briefing
money,
me on
would
it. I
be subject
appreciate
to
that.
NEPA, which
Do you agree
could
that
take
we
up to
need
years.
more
We do not have
mid-band
years.
spectrum
These
to
are
be made
national
available for
security
5G,
imperative projects,
including
which is
for
why
full power use?
Again, thank you for your
and that it is
leadership.
not only
What we are
imperative
doing,
for our economy, but
we've
also
built
for
a
our
team
national security.
on the CHIPS team in
I
the
do. Let
Commerce
me say
Department
this.
just to focus
as I said
on
yesterday,
permitting,
I think
to help help
I'd be very happy to help my staff
streamline the
NTIA
process,
and the
accelerate
DoD,
the process,
we should do it together
within the
to
existing
come and
statute.
go through the report. So we'll set
Let me
that
be
up.
clear. We don't want
And yes, I
to-
do.
I spoke with Secretary Austin
environmental
last
concerns
week,
matter,
and we are not in any way
I said
suggesting that we should do anything that hurts the
DoD
environment
needs
or
the
is
spectrum they
unsustainable.
need to
That being
execute their
said,
mission,
we do
period.
need to, which your
Having
amendment
said
would do,
that, we
streamline
also
the
need to
process,
be more
speed the
creative and
process,
innovative
make the process
about
more
how we
efficient,
share
user
spectrum
friendly, and how we use spectrum.
Interestingly,
Because the
earlier
truth of the
today,
matter
I was
is
on the
our
phone
national
with
defense depends on
members of
as
the
you
House
say, continued private
on this
sector
exact
innovation,
issue,
continued
encouraging them
innovation
to
in
5G.
do
And
their own.
my point to
take
him
your
and my
lead
point to
and pass something in
you
the
and
House.
anyone who
My view is it's
wants to
essential.
hear from
We're
me
going to do
is
everything
that
we can. We have a team.
this shouldn't
We're
be a
working on it,
zero-sum game,
but without the
right?
legislation,
We
it is very
shouldn't think
difficult.
every time the DoD
Well, that's very
shares
helpful.
or
Thank
gives
you.
something up,
Let me
they're
turn to the
losing
topic of
capacity.
spectrum, something both you
we
and I
have
care
to
a lot
find
about.
creative ways.
We all know
where
that the
we can
United
have
States
more
needs
spectrum
more
made
commercial
available
access
in
to
the
mid-band
mid-range band, as
spectrum.
you say. And
Recent
also,
studies project
the
that
DoD
U.S.
has
mobile
what they need to
traffic
do their
to
mission.
increase
And I'm
more than
committed to working
2.5
with you
times
and
over
with
the
them
next
to do
5
that.
years Thank you,
and
Madam
almost
Secretary.
sixfold in the next 10 years.
Director Panchanathan.
We need a real
During
mid-band
fiscal year
spectrum
21 and
pipeline
fiscal year
so that the U.S.
22,
can
the
dominate
NSF
and
funded
funded
some 70 grants
and
and
not fall
two
behind our
contracts,
adversaries.
totaling over $45 million.
Unfortunately, access to
focused on
mid-band
both
spectrum
the
has become almost impossible to come
science
by because so
of
much of the
countering
nation's
social
spectrum is under
media
the control
mis and disinformation
of federal agencies
as well as
who
the
are resistant
development
to share
of
it.
digital tools to track and
The
censor
Defense Department
so-called
recently
misinformation.
completed its report
on
opening access
one
to
of the
spectrum in
projects
the
was
lower
called
3
Expert
gigahertz
Voices
band
Together,
and gave it to your
is
department at the
quote,
end of last
NSF,
week.
quote,
The
creating
report
a
has not
comprehensive
been made
system of
public,
care that addresses
but
the
according to
harms
leaks,
journalists
the report
experience
does
due to
not
online
support
harassment.
sharing,
Its
let alone
mission,
allowing
incredibly
full
enough,
power 5G
is to,
use
quote,
of the band.
support journalists in
Secretary
moments of
Raimondo,
crisis
you and I
while
had a very
helping the
productive
media
call
industry
yesterday, and during that
build
call,
resilience
you
long
committed
term.
to sharing the
In other
report
words,
with me and briefing me on
taxpayer-funded
it. I
therapy
appreciate that.
for left-wing
Do you
journalists
agree
who find
that we
actual
need
facts
more mid-band
traumatizing?
spectrum to be made available
I'm sure
for 5G,
people like Taylor Lorenz will be
including
excited
for
about
full
that.
power use, and that it is
Where
not
on earth
only imperative
in the
for our
NSF's
economy,
mandate
but also
is
for
there
our
a
national
justification for these sorts of projects?
do.
And
Let
do
me
you
say this.
believe that venturing
as I said
into such
yesterday, I
politicized
think
topics
I'd be very happy to have my
undermines broader
staff,
support for the
the
NSF?
NTIA and the DOD.
Senator, first of all,
do
let
it
me tell you
together
that
to come and go through the report. So
reach,
we'll
I hope
set
that through the
up.
hearing today, you'll get
And
to
yes,
see
I do. You know, I spoke with
NSF's
Secretary
broad
Austin
impact
last week.
all across our nation
and
through
I
STEM
said,
talent development, through economic
DOD
vibrancy
needs
that
the
NSF
spectrum
makes
they
possible,
need to
and yes,
execute
national
their mission,
security objectives
period.
also being
Having said that,
fostered.
we also
I hope
need
that
to
the
be
examples
more
that I will give you
creative and
and the
innovative
answer, I'm not
about
trying
how
to
we
package
share
all of that,
spectrum
but
and how we
I
use
hope that
spectrum.
that will come
Because
through
the
very
truth of the
clearly.
matter is,
We're
our
doing a
national
lot of
defense
work
depends
about
on,
how to
as
make
you
sure the
say,
talent everywhere
continued
and
private
innovation
sector
everywhere
innovation,
is energized.
continued
Could you answer the
innovation
question,
in
though, that I
5G.
asked?
Yes, I'm just going to come to that,
And
Senator,
my
because I just want
point
to make
to
sure
him
that
and my
the
point to
NSF mission is,
you
I
and
just want to
anyone
make sure that that is clearly
wants to
understood
hear
also.
from me is that
I want to say
this
one thing
shouldn't
very
be a zero-sum
categorically.
game,
We do not,
right?
NSF does
We
not
shouldn't
engage in
think
censorship.
every time the
We do
DoD
not
shares
regulate
or gives something
any
up,
content
they're
and
losing
engage with
capacity.
anybody who also
We have to
does
find
so.
creative ways
But what we
where
do
we can have
is
more spectrum
how do the
be made
technologies
available in the
operate
mid-range band,
and
as
how
you
are they
say,
being
and
used
also
and provide the
DoD has
public
what
and
they need to do their
policymakers
mission.
the
And I'm
information
committed
that
to
they
working with
need
you and
so that
with
you
them to
can
do
make
that.
the informed decisions
Madam
about needed
Secretary.
regulations and guardrails.
Director
And for the
Panchanathan.
users, that
During
they have the
fiscal year
tool
21 and
that they
fiscal
can
year 22,
safely
the
navigate
NSF funded
content.
some 70
That's what
grants and
NSF
2
is engaged in.
contracts,
That's the kind of
totaling
projects that
over
we fund.
$45
We are
million
not in the business of
focused
censorship.
on
We are
both
not in
the
the business of
quote-unquote
controlling
science
content. I can tell you,
of
for example,
countering
even
social
in this
media
conversation that
mis
we're
and
having right now,
disinformation,
in the deep
as
fake
well as the
crowd, this
development
conversation
of
can be
digital tools to
completely
track and
altered
censor
and
so-called
presented
mis
in
or
a form that
disinformation.
you and I will say, how did it even happen?
One of the
that
projects
this
was
conversation
called
that we're having
Expert
right now has
Voices
been
Together,
transformed
and it
into
is
something
to
that's even
quote the NSF,
unrecognizable.
quote,
These
creating
kinds
a
of things that
comprehensive
happen, we are
system of
trying to
care that
find
addresses
how
the
can we
harms
build,
journalists
how can we
experience due to
invest in those
online
projects,
harassment. Its
and how
mission,
can we
incredibly
invest in
enough,
tools and
is to,
techniques
quote,
that can
support
help
journalists
safeguard.
in moments of
And that's all we are
crisis
doing.
while
We are
helping
not
the media
censoring. I want to
industry
repeat that.
build
We are not
resilience
altering
long
content.
term. When you're funding, in other words, taxpayer-funded therapy for left-wing journalists who find actual facts traumatized.
Senator, maybe I can
sure
close
people
with this
like
comment.
Taylor
I'm
Lorenz will
happy
be
to work
excited
with
about
any
that.
of you to go through this with you
Where
in
on
more
earth
of a one-on-one
in
setting
the
and
NSF's
explain
mandate
what
is
these
there a
projects are doing
justification
so
for
that it
these
can be
sorts of
helpful.
projects? And
Happy
do
to
you
take your
believe
suggestions, happy to
that
take your
venturing
inputs.
into such
NSF, I
politicized
always say
topics
NSF is a learning
undermines
agency.
broader support
We
for
learn
the NSF.
constantly because we cannot be an agency.
Senator,
that
first of all, let me
this is
tell
how
you
we
that,
do it. We are learning agencies, so happy to take
reach,
the
I
input
hope
and
that
see
through the
where,
hearing today,
if
you'll get to
any,
see
you find
NSF's
that there
broad
is
impact.
NSF
all
appearing
across
to
our
be,
nation.
as I said, we are not, but I'm happy to have the
through
discussion.
economic
Vibrancy that
Senator
NSF makes
Tester.
possible.
Thank
and yes,
you,
national
Madam Chair, and I
security objectives
appreciate
also being
the flexibility.
fostered. I hope that
Gina
the
and
examples
Ponch,
that I will
thank
give you
both
and
for
the
being
answer,
here.
I'm not trying to package all of that,
appreciate
but I
the
hope
work
that
you've
that will
done.
come
I
through very
appreciate
clearly.
everything
We're
you're
doing
doing
a
to bring
lot of
jobs
work
back
about how to
to this
make sure the
country,
talent
and I
everywhere and
appreciate
innovation
everything you're doing
everywhere
on the
is
national security
energized.
front.
Could you answer the question, though, that I asked?
Yes, I'm
We
just
have
going to come to
outsourced
that,
jobs
Senator,
in this
because I just want to
country,
make
and
sure
it
that
hasn't
the
been a good
NSF mission
idea.
is, I just want to make
Chinese
sure that that
Communist
is
Party is a
clearly
facing
understood
threat,
also.
and you both know this,
I
both
want to say one thing very
economically
categorically.
and
We do
militarily,
not,
and they want to take
NSF does not
our
engage in
place on the
censorship.
world stage.
We do not regulate
But I
any
have faith in
content
this country.
and
And I have
engage with
faith in our
anybody who
ability
also
to be able to emerge
does so.
from
But
a time
what we
when
do
we've outsourced
is
our jobs
how do the
to a
technologies
time when we can
operate
bring the jobs
and how are
back
they
here
being
again
used and
and
provide the
create what we
public
need in
and
this country
policymakers
to
the
meet the
information
needs
that
of
they
this
need
country.
so that you can
A
make
little
the
over 2 years
informed
ago,
decisions
Congress started
about
debating
needed
the Chips and
regulations and
Science
guardrails.
Act.
And
I
for the
started talking to a
users,
group
that
of
they have the
Montanans
tool
about
that they
building a
can
technology hub
safely
in
navigate
Montana,
content. That's
using
what
the
NSF
Regional
is engaged
Technology
in. That's the
Innovation
kind of
Hub
projects that we fund.
initiative
We are
that
not in
this
the business of
committee
censorship.
created.
We are not in the business of
The vision
controlling content.
for this
I
tech
can tell
hub
you,
would
for
be to
example,
establish
even in this
Montana's
conversation that we're having right
well-established
now, In the
photonics
deepfake
industry and
realm,
grow
this
it into a
conversation can be
world-class center
completely
that can
altered
outcompete
and
everyone
presented in a form
technology
that
is
you and I
critical
will
to our
say,
economic
how
growth
did it even
and
happen?
national security.
That this conversation that
Madam
we're having
Chair,
right now
I
is
am
being
blown
transformed
away
into something
by
that's
the
even
effort that Montanans have
unrecognizable.
put forth on this
These kinds of
opportunity.
things
Our
that
best,
happen, we are
our
trying to
brightest have
find
worked
how
together.
can we build, how can
Universities,
we
labor
invest
group,
in those projects,
financial group,
and how can we
state
invest in
government
tools
have
and
all
techniques
worked to
that can
craft
help
a tech hub
safeguard.
plan that works
And that's
for
all we are
our
doing. We are
state,
not
but
censoring,
most
and I want to
importantly,
repeat that we
works
are
for
not
this
altering
country.
content.
When you're
Like
funding
any
others
state,
who are engaged in censorship, you're
funding for
undermining
universities
support
is
for your very
not what it
important
should be.
agency.
And so these
Senator,
universities used
maybe
to
I can
fight
close with this
and
comment.
beat the
I'm
hell out
happy
of
to
one
work
another
with any
to
of
get
you
the money they
to go
needed.
through this with you in
and
more
the
of a
truth
one-on-one
is
setting
we have
and
watched
explain
them work together.
what these projects
I come
are
from
doing
a
so that it
state
can be helpful.
that was
Happy to
built
take your
over 100
suggestions,
years
happy
ago
to
by
take your
people who
inputs.
moved in where there was
NSF,
no
I always
grass
say
and built
NSF
farms.
is a learning agency.
Where there was just grass
we learn
and built
constantly
communities and
because
built
we cannot be an
churches
agency that
and
says
built
this is
hospitals.
how we do it.
And
We are a learning
now
agency, so happy to take
people
the
in this
input and
state of
see
Montana are
where,
working
if
together
any,
to
you
make sure that
find
Montana
that there is,
can reclaim
NSF
what we
appearing
need to
to be,
have
as I have
from
said,
a
we are not, but
technology
I'm happy to have the
standpoint
discussion with you.
to be
Thank
the
you.
nation's
Tester.
or the world's leader.
Thank you,
So
Madam
my
Chair, and I
question is
appreciate,
this to both
the
of
flexibility.
you. Gina and Ponch, thank you both for being here.
When it comes to rural America,
I appreciate
Congress has
the work
addressed
you've
it,
done,
and
and
I appreciate
in several
everything
different
you're doing to
ways.
bring jobs back
But
to this
you,
country, and I appreciate
both
everything you're
lead
doing on the national
implementation of
security front.
programs
For decades,
at your respective
we have outsourced
agencies.
jobs in this country, and
How
it
do you
hasn't been a
address
good
the
idea.
issue of rural
The
America
Chinese
and making
Communist
sure that
Party is
your
our facing
initiatives
threat, and you both
will work
know
for
this,
rural America,
both economically
and do not leave
and
them
militarily,
behind
and they
on
want
which
to
one
take
goes
our
first.
place on the world stage.
Thank you. I'll go
But
first.
I
and I'll
have
be
faith
brief.
in this country. And I have faith
We,
in our
as I
ability
said
to be able to
earlier,
emerge from
we have been
a time when we've
overwhelmed by
outsourced
the
our jobs
quality and
to a time when we
quantity
can
of the
bring the
tech
jobs
hub
back here again
applications. As
and
you recall,
create
it
what we
was
need in this country
authorized for
to
$10
meet the
billion.
needs of this country.
We received $500
A little over 2
million,
years ago,
and we have
Congress
over
started debating the
400
Chips and
applications.
Science Act.
So
I started
if
talking
we
to
come
a
away
group
with
of
nothing
Montanans
else,
about building a
clearly
technology
this
hub
is
in
worthy
Montana
of more funding.
using the
We will
Regional
do
Technology
a
Innovation
minimum
Hub
of
initiative
20 tech
that this
hubs,
committee created.
possibly more. And
The
I
vision
promise you some
for
will
this
be
tech
rural.
hub would be to establish
I promise
Montana's
you it will be Montana, but I
well-established
promise you some will be
photonics
rural.
industry and grow it
Let's
into
hope for
a
a different
world-class
I know
center
that. I know,
that
but
can
I'm trying to
outcompete
be
everyone
honest
in
here.
technology is
I
critical to our
promise we
economic
will look
growth
at yours
and
and all
national
of yours,
security.
and
Madam
there
Chair,
will
I
be
am
rural
blown away
representation. We
by
are
the effort
determined
that
to do it.
Montanans have put
Statute
forth on this
requires it. We're
opportunity.
doing
Our
a
best,
huge amount of
our brightest
outreach.
have
I
worked
tell my
together.
team, there's no
Universities,
substitute
labor
for
group,
showing up. Show up
financial
in
group,
rural
state
communities,
government
let them know
have all
we're
worked
there
to
and help
craft a
them
tech
to put
hub
forward
plan
a
that
good
works for
application.
our
So
state, but
we're
most
highly
importantly,
conscious
works
of
for
it,
this
and we're
country.
doing a lot of outreach.
Like
Look,
any
the only thing
state,
I would say is, if we pick,
funding
say,
for
20,
universities is not
hypothetically
what it
20,
should be.
every
And so
one of
these
those
universities
would be
used to
worthy
fight
of, say,
and
$100
beat the
million
hell out of one
grant
another
to really
to get
move
the money
needle
they
and create
needed.
a hub. That's $2
And
billion.
the truth is we have watched
$500
them
million.
work together.
And you've
I
authorized
come from a
$10 billion.
state
So
that was built over 100 years
guarantee you
ago
we're
by
focused
people who
on
moved
rural.
in where
I
there was no
guarantee
grass
you,
and built farms.
you will
where there was
be
just grass and
pleased
built
with the
communities
results,
and built
and I
churches
guarantee you this program
and
is
built
worthy of more
hospitals.
funding.
And now the people in
Thank you
this
very much,
state of
Senator. It was
Montana are
great
working
meeting with you.
together
And
to
when
make
I
sure
spoke
that
to you, and I
Montana
want to
can
reinforce that,
reclaim what we need to
NSF's
have
commitment
from a technology
energizing talent and
standpoint
ideas
to be
everywhere
the
across our
nation's
nation
or the world's
is in
leader.
full force.
So my question
and
is this to both of
actioned
you.
everywhere now, even as we speak. But let me address
When
specific
it comes
things
to
in relation
rural
your
America,
question about two projects
Congress has
that even
addressed
just
it
got
in
funded
certain-
very
in
recently
several different
in terms
ways.
of unleashing
But
innovation in the state
you,
of Montana. This is to
both
Montana
lead
State University in
implementation of
Bozeman.
programs
They are leading an
in your
NSF
respective
Engines Development
agencies.
Award. These awards
How
are
do
meant
you
to bring
address the
all of the
issue
innovative
of rural
capacity in
America and
every
making
region
sure that your
to see how we
initiatives
can lift them up
will
through
work for rural
partnerships
America
as well as NSF
and
seeding
do
investments
not leave them
that then
behind? I don't
can
care
further
which
be
one
built
goes
with
first. Go ahead.
the higher level of
Thank
NSF
you.
Type 2 awards
I'll go
and
first and
partnering
I'll be
with
brief.
Commerce and EDA. We have assigned
We,
an
as I said
MOU
earlier,
of regional technology
we
hubs,
have
how we
been
can work together.
overwhelmed
We are
by
like
the
this, we are not
quality
like this
and
anymore.
quantity of the tech
Secretary
hub
Raimondo will agree with
applications.
in the fact that
As you
because of
recall,
her leadership
it was
and her commitment to
authorized
working in
for $10
partnership,
billion.
the two of us
We
are
received
working closely
$500
together. Our
million,
departments
and we
are
have
working
over
closely together,
400
and we don't want anything to
applications.
fall in between. So this project, for
if you come away
example,
with
is
nothing
focused on
else,
advancing quantum
clearly
and
this is
supporting
worthy of more
technologies in the
funding.
northern
We will
intermountain
do
states,
a
with
minimum
Montana,
of 20
Wyoming,
tech
and Idaho.
hubs,
There is another
possibly
one,
more,
which is University
and
of
I
Montana
promise
in
you some
Missoula,
will be rural.
is leading the NSF Engine's
promise you it will be
development
Montana, but
focused
I
on
promise you
advancing
some will be
precision
rural.
So look for a
forestry,
different answer.
I know
Keep
that.
going.
I know,
you would
but I'm
agree,
trying to
there
be
is much
honest
more
here.
in-place innovation
I promise we will
and
look at yours and all
rangeland
of yours,
technologies.
and there
So
will be rural
these were
representation.
just the
We are
awards that were
determined to do it.
made just a
Statute
few weeks
requires
ago.
it. We're
So you
doing
can
a
see
huge
that
amount of
we are
outreach.
constantly
I tell
exploring
my team,
options,
there's
working
no
with the
substitute
communities
for
to
showing
see
up,
what we can do
show up
in terms
rural
of talent
communities, let
development
them know
as well as innovation.
we're there and help them to
energization.
put forward a good
Thank you, Madam
application.
Chair.
So
Senator
we're
Wicker.
highly conscious of it, and we're
Thank you
doing
very
a lot
much,
of outreach.
Madam Chairman, and
Look, the
thanks
only
to
thing
our
I would
two
say is,
witnesses.
if we pick, say,
I
20,
bet neither one of you is
hypothetically 20,
surprised that
every
we've
one
had
of those
questions
would be
already
worthy of, say, a
about
$100
rural
million
America.
grant to really move
And,
the needle and create a
and
hub.
so,
That's $2 billion.
Dr. Ponch,
We
let
have
me just
$500
ask
million.
if-
And you've
since
authorized
you were
$10 billion.
specific,
So I
to
guarantee you
to
are focused on
Montana,
rural.
which is a
I
state
guarantee you,
I really admire.
You will be pleased with the results, and I
could
guarantee you
you,
this program is worthy of more funding.
Tell us the
Thank you very much, Senator. It was great meeting with you. And when I spoke
of
to
the
you, and I want to
legislation,
reinforce
how that is already
NSF's commitment
perhaps
of
benefiting
energizing talent and
researchers in
ideas
other
everywhere
rural
across our
states.
nation.
Thank you very much,
Senator,
Senator,
for posing the
and
question.
is
Action. First of all, thank you for hosting me. But let me address
Yes,
specific
thank you.
things related to
I
your
believe
question
Mississippi
about two
was the
projects
first state.
that even just
That's
got
the first
funded
state we had
very
the NSF
recently
Day
in
celebration,
terms of unleashing innovation. So it was a in the great state of launch Montana.
effort.
It was wonderful to meet all the different institutions. They're leading an NSF Engines Development Award. These awards are meant to bring all of the innovative capacity in every region. We were able to see how we can lift them up through partnerships, now to the state as well as NSF seeding investments. And so firsthand can then further be built with the higher level of NSF Type 2 awards and partnering with Commerce in the state of Mississippi. We have now invested, and I'm going to go through regional technology hubs, how we can work together. We are like this. We are not like this anymore. Again, the NSF Engines Development Award. In the fact that because of our leadership and our commitment to working in partnership, the two of us focus on advancing food security, our departments are working closely together, and we don't want anything to fall in between. So this project, for example, is focused on advancing quantum and then the next one is technologies in the northern intermountain states. With Montana advancing autonomous technologies for advanced manufacturing. There's another one, which is University of Montana in Missoula, is leading the NSF Engines Development, focused $1 million in Mississippi Gulf Forest Community College, which is, you would agree, to broaden much more in-place emerging technology programs and as well as increasing the supply and diversity of the IT workforce. These were just the awards that were made just a few weeks ago. So you can see that we are constantly exploring options, working with the communities to see what we can do in terms of talent development targets that you and I had in discussion. If you recall, in your office, we said, you asked me the question,
Senator Wicker.
do you think that you will meet those targets?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
FY23 and then going on to FY29. I'm happy to report to you today, in FY23, we not only met, but we exceeded the
questions already
and that
about
these are
rural
mutually
America.
beneficial.
Thank you very much.
And you may want to supplement your answer further.
Ponch,
Let me just say, I really don't
since you were
think this
specific
legislation
to Montana, which is a state I really admire
the EPSCoR provision, and I do want to thank the chair for
tell us
help on a bipartisan
the
basis in that
EPSCoR
regard.
part
And Madam
of
Secretary,
the
you may
legislation,
want to
how that is already
answer on the
perhaps
record
benefiting
about rural America. But let me go ahead and see if I can follow up.
Thank you very much, Senator, for posing the question.
That Senator
First of all,
Cruz
thank you for
mentioned.
hosting me.
Do I understand?
Yes, thank you. I believe
you have
Mississippi was the first
you
state.
and your office.
That's
have
the
been
first
able to
state we had the
visit
NSF Day
and
celebration,
report,
right? So it was a great launch effort.
concerning
And it was
the,
wonderful to meet all the different
lower 3
institutions in the
gigahertz
state of
stuff.
Mississippi, community
We got it at
colleges,
the end of last
all
week,
the higher,
yes.
higher
Yes,
education
we got it at the
institutions
end of
coming
last week.
together, and that we were able to
So
interact with the researchers and
do I
students.
understand
Now to the
you
state
to
of
say
Mississippi.
that
And saw
there are
firsthand,
areas of
and
the
this
report
confirmed my belief
that
that
you
talent and
disagree
ideas are
with?
democratized and they're everywhere.
I have
Now,
not
in the state of Mississippi,
gone through it all myself.
we have now invested,
so
and I'm going to go through a few
You could not understand me
projects
saying
in the state
that.
of
We
Mississippi.
received
Okay,
feedback
well,
on Friday.
what did you say?
Again, the NSF
that,
Engines Development Award, the first of
with that
the first of
regard?
those to Jackson
What I
State
said is this:
University,
we need to
focused on advancing food security and climate
do a
resilience.
better job
We have a
of
new
being more
senator who's
creative in
an
figuring
alum of
out
Jackson
ways to have more
That's right.
that mid-band
And then the next one is to
spectrum
Mississippi State
available
University in Starksville, where we were
for
together. This is
commercial
an advancing
use to
autonomous
power
technologies for
innovation
advanced manufacturing.
in ways that
We
do
talked about
not
this when we were
interfere
together
with or
the
in any way
researchers there.
degrade
In
the
addition to
DoD's
that,
mission.
we have
Okay, well,
invested
let me just
almost
say,
$1 million
agree
in Mississippi Gulf
with
Coast
that
Community
statement
College
that you
on 2
just
projects
made
to
as
broaden
you,
participation in emerging
as
technology
you said
programs,
it, and to the
as well as
extent
increasing the supply and diversity
the
of the IT
report coming
workforce
from
in the Mississippi Gulf
the
Coast
Department of
region.
Defense
These are real projects
is
making
more
a real
restrictive
difference in
that
terms
regard.
of unearthing
I
the
wouldn't have a
talent
problem
and
with that.
ideas.
When are members
in
of the
Mississippi.
committee
And to the EPSCoR core targets that you and I had a
members of the Senate
discussion, if you
are gonna be able
recall,
to see
in your
this
office,
We,
you
as I
said,
said, we just
you asked
received
me
it, I
the
think, on
question,
Friday
do
of
you
last
think that
week.
you will meet those targets?
We're going through it now,
for
and
FY
I'd be
'23
happy
and then
to
going on to
follow up,
FY
and we'll have a
'29.
briefing
I'm
schedule
happy
where
to
the
report to you
DOD
today.
and NTIA
In FY
can come
'23, we not
over
only met,
whenever
but
you
we
want.
exceeded
Madam
the
Chair, I
level.
like the idea of a
that
briefing.
these are
I
mutually
really think
beneficial.
Thank you very much. And you may want to supplement your answer
more of an
further.
opportunity
Let me
for
just
give
say,
and
I
take.
really
But
don't
I
think
think
this legislation,
to the extent
would have passed
you say
so easily
there is
had we
room
not been able to
for
include
the
both
escort
sides to
provision,
benefit.
and I do want to
and
thank
for
the
neither
chair
side to
for
have a loss,
help
even
on a bipartisan basis in that
reluctant to
regard.
say side,
And
either
Madam
department
Secretary, you may
or,
want to answer on the record about rural America, but let me go ahead and
That's
see
not
if I can
necessary.
follow up
That's-
on something
splitting the
that
blanket,
Senator Cruz
in this
mentioned.
regard.
That
Do
is
I
my point.
understand
I think historically, the
that
debate has been
you
approached.
have, you
Anytime
and your office have seen
DOD
the
gives up
completed
anything, it is a
report,
loss. And I think we have to modernize our
concerning
thinking.
the
There are ways
lower 3
that
gigahertz study.
we got it at the end of last week. They can have everything they need.
we got it at the end of last
And
week.
also,
And
we must make
so
more available
do-
for private
do I
innovation because that
understand you to
advances national
say
security as well.
that there are
National
areas of the
security
report
benefits from both.
that
Thank
you
you, and
disagree
thank you,
with?
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator,
I have
we will
not
take you up on
gone
the
through it all
briefing.
myself,
Senator,
so
thank you.
y-
Senator
you could
Klobuchar.
not
Thank
understand
you
me
very
saying
much.
that. We
Okay,
received
well,
everything
well,
on
what did-
Friday.
what did you
both
say
of you.
that,
Secretary, thank you so much
with that
for
regard?
your visit to Bloomington,
What I said is
Minnesota.
this, right? We
You're a
need
big
to
hit there, and at Normandale Community
do
College.
a better job of
And
being more
I think
creative
you saw
and
there
figuring
that
out
we are
ways
one of
to
just
have
a few
more
states
that
that have a full
mid-band
existing
spectrum available
semiconductor supply chain
for
design, fab
commercial
foundries,
use
tool
to
makers,
power innovation
integrators, gas
in
chemical
ways that do
producers,
not interfere
testing,
with or in any way
packaging, you name
degrade
it.
the DoD's mission.
Could you
Okay,
talk
well,
about
let me just
how
say,
the
I
Commerce
agree
Department is
with
working to
that
support
statement that
smaller
you just
companies
made as
looking to
you,
get involved in that
as
supply
you
chain?
said it. And
Yes,
to the
I love to
extent
visit, so thank you for having
that
me.
the report
We,
coming from
of the 39
the
billion,
Department of Defense
we have said
is more
about
restrictive
10
in that
will
regard.
be
I
used
would have a
for
problem with that. When are members of
mature
the committee
legacy
and
and
members of
supply
the Senate
chain.
going to be able to see
So
this
there
report?
will
as I said,
be
we
a
just
great deal of
received it, I
money
think, on
available
Friday of
for
last week.
smaller companies.
We're going through it now,
and supply
I'd be
chain
happy to
companies,
follow
like some
up
of the
and we'll
ones
have a
that we
briefing
met
schedule
with.
where the DOD and NTIA can
So
come
I,
over
whenever
I
you
can
want.
assure you
Madam Chair,
that
I
that
like
will
the idea of a
happen.
briefing.
And just, I
I
said
really
earlier,
think it's,
We've received 500
less
statements of
formal and there's
interest
more of an
from, I think,
opportunity for
42
give and take.
states and over
But
100
I think
applications or
that to the
pre-applications.
extent
Many of
you
those
say
are
there
smaller
is
companies,
room
supply chain companies.
for both sides to benefit. and
So
for neither
rest
side to
assured that we're
have a
looking
loss.
at those
I
opportunities,
even-
not just the very biggest companies that we all
reluctant
know
to say
about.
side, either
All right,
department
thank you.
or,
And then, given that you
or,
visited a community
area
college there,
of
Normandale
endeavor to
Community
have
College.
a loss.
Can you talk
That's
about,
not
given
necessary.
that we
in-
need
in
100,000 new
splitting blanket,
semiconductor
in this regard.
technicians,
That is
another
my point. I think
140,000 people
historically,
in the
the debate
trades
has been approached.
to build
Anytime
semiconductor
DoD gives up
manufacturing
anything, it is a loss.
facilities.
And I think we have to
have a shortfall
modernize
of
our
about
thinking.
300,000
There are
engineers,
ways,
90,000 skilled technicians
that
in the U.S.
If we're creative,
could you
they
talk
can
about
have
the
everything they
importance of community
need. And
colleges
also,
one and
we
two-year
must
degrees
make
and all
more
of this?
available for private
So
innovation
one of
because
the
that
most
advances
exciting,
national security as well.
facts,
I
National
think,
security benefits
in the
from both.
time
Thank
that
you, thank you,
the
Madam
bill
Chair.
Thank
was
you.
signed,
Senator,
between
we
then
will take you
and
up
now,
on the briefing.
we know
Senator,
of
thank
at
you.
least
Senator
50
Klobuchar.
community
Thank you very
colleges
much,
in 19
Chair
states
Cantwell.
that have
It's good to
announced
see both of you.
new programs to help
Secretary,
American
thank you
workers
so much for your
find
visit
jobs
to
in the
Bloomington,
semiconductor
Minnesota.
industries, right?
You were a
I mean,
big
I
hit
think that's
there,
amazing.
and
Just the
at
fact
Normandale
that the
Community
passage of the bill,
College.
community colleges
And
are
I think
mobilizing
you
to
saw
say,
there that
how do we
are
fill the gap
one of just a few
100,000
states
technicians
that
that we're
have a
currently
full
short?
existing semiconductor
We, of
supply
course, will be
chain,
establishing the National
design, fab
Semiconductor
foundries, tool
Technology
makers,
Center,
integrators, gas chemical producers,
and a huge
testing,
component of that
packaging,
will be
you name it.
workforce, and we'll do that in collaboration
Could you talk
with the
about
NSF.
how the Commerce
And
Department is
community-
working to
I
support
should say
smaller
everyone has a role
companies
to play. High
looking to
schools
get
with
involved
career and
in that
technical
supply chain?
education.
Yes,
Community
I'd love to
colleges have a
visit,
huge
so
role
thank
to
you for
play.
having me.
Four-year colleges, PhD programs.
Of the 39
up
billion,
and down the ladder.
we have
I think
said,
community colleges, though, in
about
training
10
technicians, cyber technicians, mature process analysts, et cetera, have a particular role to play. So there will be a great deal of money available.
And what a great
for
transition
smaller
quickly to
companies
Dr. Ponch. You
and supply chain
mentioned
companies, like some of the
all
ones that we met
degrees,
with.
and I know that he's going to be visiting the University of Minnesota. You met the interim president when you were visiting Secretary.
And just, I said earlier,
could you
we've received 500
talk
statements
about,
of
I know they're one of the
interest from, I
finalists
think, 42
in the
states
NSF
and over
Regional
100
Innovation Engines
applications or
Program.
pre-applications.
In your view,
Many of
how
those
can
are
public-private
smaller companies,
partnerships,
supply
Dr.
chain
Ponch, help
companies,
to accelerate innovations?
So
No, very,
rest
very
assured
important
that we're
public-private
looking at
partnerships. In
those
fact, our Regional
opportunities, not
Innovation
just the
Engine
very biggest
program
companies that we
was
all know
created
about.
with the explicit
All right,
purpose
thank you.
of how we
And
might
then,
bring
given that you visited
all
a
of the
community
component
college
parts
there,
together
Raimondo Community
to
College.
ensure that the innovation
Can
is
you talk about,
completely
given
energized and catalyzed.
that we need 100,000
So our Regional Innovation Engine
semiconductor
program,
technicians,
44
another
awards have been made,
140,000
where
people in the
46 states
trades,
and territories are involved
to
in this.
build
Every one
semiconductor,
of those awards
manufacturing
have a number of industry
facilities,
partners,
and we think we have a
state governments,
shortfall of about
being
300,000
partnering in that,
engineers,
and sometimes
90,000
even
skilled
non-governmental
technicians in the
organizations,
US.
NGOs being partners in that.
Could you talk
And
about
we have,
the
of course,
importance
community
community
colleges,
and
technical
1 and 2-year
colleges,
degrees
K-12
and all of this?
institutions, as well
So
as
one of
universities
the
and
most
universities.
exciting
So this is exceedingly
facts,
important. Let
I
me give you a
think,
couple of examples if
in
this
the
will illustrate the
time
point very
that
clearly.
the bill
We earlier talked
was
about
signed, between
6G
then
and 5G.
now,
We call it the next
we
G,
know
let us
of
say.
at
So the
least
resilience,
50 community
intelligent,
colleges in 19
next generation
states
system,
that
or
have
the RINGS
announced
program,
new
has
programs to help
35
American
companies
workers
participating in
find
the
jobs
RINGS
in the
program.
semiconductor industry.
And the total amount of resources
I
that they
think
bring
that's
to the
amazing.
table
Just the fact
is
that
$50
the
million
passage of the bill,
in
community
kind and
colleges are
actual
mobilizing
investments.
to say,
NSF
how
matched
do we
that
fill
with
the
another
gap of
$50 million
100,000 technicians that were
to now have a
currently
very
short?
robust program
We,
of looking
of course,
at
will be
how do we
establishing
build the
National
next generation
Semiconductor
networks,
Technology
including
Center,
rural broadband being made accessible,
and a huge
so that
component of
talent
that
and
will be
ideas can have
workforce,
access to
and we'll
all
do
the
that in
content
collaboration with
that
the
we are
NSF.
generating all across our
And
nation.
community-
So
I
to
should
the
say
community college,
everyone
because
has
you
a
asked
role
that
to
question,
play.
I
High
cannot but help
schools
tell
with
you
career and technical
about this
education,
community college.
community colleges
Hennepin
have a huge role
Technical
to play.
College
Yes,
Four-year
that's in my
colleges,
state.
PhD programs,
is
up
leading
and down
an
the ladder.
NSF
I think
advanced
community
technical
colleges,
education.
though, in
ATE.
training
This program has been in vogue
technicians,
for a
cyber
long time.
technicians,
Essentially, community colleges which are
process
invested in
analysts, et
for
cetera,
new
have a
curriculum,
particular
modern
role to
curriculum,
play,
as
and
well
we're
as in
already
terms of
working with
Very
students.
good.
Well,
Thank you, and what a great and we look transition forward to your quickly visit. We to
I
Dr.
look forward to
Ponch.
being
You
with you.
be wearing a
Mentioned,
Gophers hat
all degrees,
when you're there,
and I
just
know
to
that he's
bother
gonna be
Senator
visiting
Fisher
the
with her
University of
Nebraska
Minnesota.
team.
You met the interim
But I
president
also
when
want
you
to
were
thank the chairwoman
visiting
for her
secretary.
incredible leadership on
Could
this
you
bill. We wouldn't be,
talk about,
where
I
we
know
are
they're one of the
today if it wasn't for
finalists
Senator
in
Kamala.
the NSF Regional Innovation Engines Program. In
Thank you,
your
Madam
view,
Chairman, and
how can
thank you to
public-private
both of our
partnerships, Dr.
witnesses for
Ponch,
being
help
here
to
today.
accelerate
Between your
innovation?
two agencies,
No, very, very
you've
important
received
to have
more than
public-private
$54
partnerships. In fact, our
billion in
Regional Innovation Engine
appropriations
program
under the
was
CHIPS
created
and
with the
Science
explicit
Act so
purpose
far.
of how we might
This is an
bring
enormous
all
amount
of the
of
component
taxpayer
parts
money.
together
Earlier
to
this year, the
ensure that the
Commerce
innovation
Department's
is
Inspector
completely
General
energized
described
and
the novel
catalyzed.
challenges
So our
facing
Regional
the
Innovation Engine
implementation of
program,
CHIPS.
44
The
awards have been
IG
made,
highlighted
where
the
46
need for
states
new
and territories are involved in
and
this.
appropriate
Every
oversight
one of those
for this
awards
unprecedented
have a number of
influx
industry
funding,
partners, state
stating
governments,
that it, quote, may
being
require
partnering
additional
in that,
monitoring
and sometimes even
reporting
a non-governmental
to ensure
organization,
project
NGOs being
recipients
partners in
comply
that.
with statutes,
And we have, of course, community
achieve
colleges,
intended
technical
outcomes,
colleges,
and
K-12
use funds
institutions, as well as
efficiently,
universities,
close
research
quote.
universities. So this is
The
exceedingly
Inspector
important.
General
Let me give you a
has
couple of
also
examples if
noted
this will
that
illustrate the point very
contract
clearly.
and grant
We earlier
fraud
talked
now
about,
account for
6G and 5G. We call it the next
of the
G, let us say.
OIG's
So the
Department of
resilience,
Commerce
intelligent, next generation
Before
system,
fiscal
or the RINGS
2021,
program,
they
has
represented
35
roughly
companies
35%.
participating in the RINGS
Secretary
program.
Raimondo,
And the
have
total
you
amount of
planned to
resources that they bring to the
implement any
table
specific
is $50 million
oversight measures to
in kind and
respond
actual
to
investments.
this concerning
NSF matched that
development
with
that we're
another
seeing?
$50 million.
Yes, thank you,
To now
Senator,
have a
and
very
thank you for the
robust
question.
program of
You are
looking at
absolutely right.
how do we
This is
build the next
unprecedented.
generation
Commerce
networks,
Department has never
including
implemented
rural
anything of this
broadband
size.
being made accessible
And I take
so
that
that talent and
responsibility
ideas can
incredibly
have access to
seriously.
all the content
I have a job
that we are
to
generating
achieve
all
national
across our
security
nation.
goals and
So
to protect
to the
taxpayer
community
money.
college, because you
We
asked
aim
that
to do
question, I
both,
cannot
to
but
be
help tell
steward
you
of taxpayer
about
money.
this community college.
We are building a
Hennepin
team since the
Technical
time the bill
College.
Yes,
passed.
that's in my
We've built a
is
team of about 150
is leading
professionals.
an
I would
NSF
invite you to
advanced
meet them
technical
anytime.
education.
They are
ATE.
incredibly
This
talented
program has
people.
been in vogue for a long
And
time.
we're building a risk
Essentially,
team
community colleges which are invested in
specifically
for new
devoted
curriculum,
to the
model
issues that
curriculum,
you
as well as in
highlight.
terms of
Very
students.
good.
The risk
Thank you.
team is a
And
risk
we look forward to your
professionals
visit.
to
We
make
expect
sure
I
you
look
we're
forward to being
evaluating
with
all the risk.
Be wearing a
and
Gophers
also,
hat when you're there,
after
just to
we
bother
put the
Senator
money
Fisher
out
with
to
her
make sure that
Nebraska
the companies
team.
are
But
doing
I
what
also
they
want to
said
thank
they
the
would do.
chairwoman for her incredible
Also, we
leadership
don't
on
plan
this
to put the
bill.
money
We
out
wouldn't
to these
be,
companies
where
in
we are
one lump
today
sum.
if it wasn't for
We
Senator
plan
Cantwell.
to put it out on milestone-based achievement.
Madam
so
Chairman,
some
and
money,
thank you
see
to-
what they do.
to,
So
both of our witnesses for being
we
here
are
today.
going to be
Between your two
massively transparent,
agencies, you've received more than $54
provide
billion
notice as we're
in
required to do to
appropriations
Congress for
under
investments
the
of $10 million
CHIPS
or
and Science
more.
Act so far.
And have
This is an enormous
we're doing an
amount of
incredible
taxpayer
amount of due
money.
diligence. all
Earlier
of which
this
will
year,
be
the Commerce
documented.
Department's Inspector
And as I
General
said, have a whole team
described the novel
devoted to
challenges
management
facing
of
the
risk
implementation
and
of
compliance
CHIPS.
of the companies
The IG
to the
highlighted
promises
the
that they
need
make
for
us
new
in
controls
exchange for the money.
and appropriate oversight
Do you
for this
s-
unprecedented
in this report, were there
influx
any
of funding,
patterns
stating that it,
emerged,
quote, may require
when you see
additional
that
monitoring
increase
and reporting to
in
ensure
fraud? Were there
project
any,
recipients comply
patterns,
with
anything,
statutes, achieve
specific
intended
that-
outcomes,
that,
and use funds
companies may be
efficiently,
doing
close quote.
that would
The
be
Inspector
red
General
flags to be
has
able to
also
help this
noted
risk team to
that
be able to,
contract and grant
identify
fraud
them at
now
a
account for
earlier
65%
Yeah.
of the
It's a great
OIG's
question, and of course
Department
something
of
that we're
Commerce cases.
obsessed with, always trying
Before
to get better.
fiscal 2021,
No, not
they
particularly.
represented roughly 35%.
As was said earlier,
Secretary Raimondo, have
look,
you
putting
planned to
$50 billion
implement
of
any
taxpayer money
specific
out
oversight measures
in partnership
to
with private
respond
sector companies
to this
is a
concerning
challenge.
development
And
that we're
so
seeing?
I don't think there's
Yes,
any
thank you,
one
Senator,
answer.
and thank you
I
for
can
the
simply
question.
tell
You
you
are absolutely
the team
right.
we
This is
have
unprecedented. The Commerce
is
Department has
built
never
with
implemented anything of this
professionals that
size.
have
And
10,
I
20,
take that
30 years of
responsibility
experience
incredibly
and track
seriously.
record. We're building
I have a
new
job to
systems,
achieve
whole
national
new
security
systems
goals
of due
and to
diligence,
protect taxpayer
compliance.
money.
Every
And we aim to
company,
do
for
both,
example,
to be steward of
will have to give
taxpayer
us
money.
a security plan,
We are building
an
a
R&D
team
plan,
since
a
the time the bill
financial plan,
passed.
open
We've
their
built a
books
team
to
of
us, share their
150
finances with
professionals.
us.
I would invite
and
you
we
to meet
will
them
use all of that
anytime. They're
information to hold
incredibly
them
talented
accountable.
people.
And we're building a risk
You
team
mentioned that you're putting
specifically
money out,
devoted to
like
the issues that
first
you
payments, second
highlight.
payments, to be able to-
The risk
to be able to
team
keep
is of
track
risk
of it easier.
professionals to make
If
sure
you
we're
would see
evaluating all the
anything that was
risk. And
questionable
also,
there, can you cancel
after
grants?
we
Yes.
put the money out to make sure that the companies are doing what they said they would do.
depending on the situation. For
Also,
example, if
we
they
don't
violated
plan
the
to put
China
the money out to
guardrails,
these companies
or
in
we
one lump
could,
sum. We
would
plan
not
to
fund the next
put it out on
tranche if they didn't meet the
milestone-based
conditions that were required.
achievement. So
Right.
some
I would
money,
be
see what
negligent
they
if I
do.
didn't
So,
put a plug in for Nebraska
we
as well.
are going to
Since
be
we're going down
massively
the dais
transparent,
here, to be able to get a plug in
provide
for
notice as
Nebraska
we're
and
required to do to
the good
Congress for
things that we
investments of
see.
$10 million or more.
I do have a question though on
and
how
have,
do you define
we're doing an
what a
incredible
region
amount
is?
of due diligence,
And then,
all of which will be
also,
documented.
Dr.
And as I
Pines,
said, have
if
a
you could
whole
say
team
nice things about
devoted
my
to
state.
management of risk and compliance of the companies to the promises that they make
Look it
us
up.
in exchange
Yes,
for the
no,
money.
we have it. Ready to go whenever you're.
But how do you define
Okay.
patterns
So,
that emerge?
well, for the tech hubs, we
when you
have to
see that
have
increase
several
in fraud. Were there any,
awardees
patterns,
within each
anything,
of the EDA's region.
specific
So the Economic
that-
Development Agency
that,
has statutorily
companies
several
may be
regions around the
doing
country,
that
and we have to
would
have
be
some
red flags
tech
to be
hubs in
able to
each
help
region.
this risk team to be able to
So, Senator,
identify
first of
them
all,
at a
NSF
earlier
had
time.
of this
Yeah.
investment
It's a
that was
great
made of
question,
chips
and
and
of course
science.
something that
NSF
we're
got $200
obsessed
million
with, always trying to
over
get
5
better.
years.
No,
The
not
science
particularly.
portion of NSF's
As
is still
was
an
said earlier,
authorization, not an appropriation.
Look,
We're hoping
putting
that we
$50
will
billion
have
of
the
taxpayer
investments that is
money
planned
out
in the authorizations to become
partnership with private
appropriations.
sector
But we are
companies
not waiting
is a
for that
challenge.
to energize
And so
the innovation
I don't
all
think
across
there's
the
any
nation,
one
as you
answer.
heard.
I can simply
that I
tell
mentioned
you
that.
the
The
team we
$200 million
have
is being used
is
in
built
order to
with
be able to generate the
professionals that
100,000
have 10,
semiconductor
20, 30
technicians,
years of
workers,
experience and
researchers
track record.
that our nation
We're
needs
building
very rapidly.
new systems,
Secretary
whole
talked about
new
what we need by
systems of
2030,
due diligence,
but it is about the fact that
compliance.
it's even beyond
Every
2030.
company, for example,
so NSF is
will
working
have to give
towards
us
that.
a security
and in
plan, an
partnership
R&D
again, to the
plan,
earlier
a
question,
financial
public-private
plan,
partnerships.
open
We're
their
working
books
with a
to us,
consortium of
share their
companies,
finances with
Micron,
us,
Intel,
and we
Samsung,
will use all of
Ericsson,
that information
and
to
others.
hold them
To
accountable.
the state of Nebraska, since you asked.
You mentioned
So
that you're putting
we are very
money
thrilled
out
again, NSF's investments span all
first
parts
payment,
of
second
our nation,
payment, to be able
energizing
to-
community
to be
colleges,
able to keep
universities,
track
and
of
so
these
on.
here.
Let me give you a
If
couple
you
of
would see
examples from
anything that
Nebraska.
was
So the
questionable there,
University of
can
Nebraska
you cancel
EPSCO
grants?
Yes.
that are
yes.
to track one
We
award,
could
which is
claw
$20
back
million
money.
for the period
depending on the
of
situation, for example, if they violated the China guardrails,
or participating in the second quantum revolution.
We would not
by
fund
launching
the
an
next tranche
interdisciplinary,
if they didn't meet the conditions that were
interdepartmental,
required.
and multi-campus
I
research
would
and
be
education
negligent if
cluster
I didn't put a plug in
focused
for
on
Nebraska
emergent
as well.
quantum materials
We're
and
going down the
technologies
dais
called
here
Equate.
to be able to get a
This
plug
is
in for
essentially to
Nebraska.
increase the jurisdiction's
The
competitiveness
good things that
in the
we
area of
see.
quantum science and technologies.
I do
That's
have a
one
question
example.
though on how
There is
do
another
you
project
define
again,
what a region
which we have
is?
an award to the
And
Nebraska
then,
Lincoln, which is a
also,
companion to the Large
Dr.
Hadron
Punch,
Collider.
if you could say
work
nice
that is
things about
happening.
my state.
So here, we are essentially supporting a CMS detector and a supporting software being developed
Look it up.
at the University of Nebraska.
no, we have
so
it.
clearly, again, I
Ready
want
to
to
go
re-emphasize
whenever
this
you're-
point. You're
But
going
how
to
do- how
tire
do you
me
define
saying
region?
this. Talent and
well,
ideas
for the tech hubs,
are
we have
everywhere,
to have
and it is our
several,
responsibility to find them, nurture them,
awardees
motivate them,
within
and bring them to
each
life.
of the
That's the
EDA's
only way we're going
regions.
to
So the Economic
outcompete
Development Agency
other
has
nations.
statutorily
Thank you.
several
There
regions
is
around the
no
country,
place
and we
like
have
Nebraska.
to have some
Thank you.
tech
Thank
hubs
you,
in
Madam
each
Chair.
region.
Senator Hickenlooper, I'm going to ask you to chair while I run a
first of
vote,
all,
and then follow you will be
NSF
Senator
had
Moran.
of this investment that was made of chips and
And
science.
Senator Fisher, I'll put in a
NSF
plug
got
for
$200
Nebraska as
million
well, but only
over
after I
5
put in a
years.
plug for Colorado.
The science portion of NSF's
Thank you,
is
Madam
still
Chair.
an authorization, not an appropriation.
It's great to see such a crowd
We're
here. I feel a
hoping
little
that
bit
we will
like
have
we're
the investments
Sunday
that
Night
is
Football
planned in
with
the
Taylor
authorizations
Swift
to become
and Travis
appropriations.
Kelce.
But we are not waiting for
I haven't
that
seen as many
to
people in this room
energize the
in
innovation
quite a
all
while.
across the nation, as you heard that I
Dr.
mentioned that. The $200 million is
Panchanathan,
being used
I know
in order
that
to
you
be
attract
able
a
to
crowd
generate
and
the
that you,
100,000
really devoted yourself to
semiconductor
these
technicians,
issues.
workers, researchers that our
And
nation needs
Secretary
very
Raimondo,
rapidly.
just for you other senators should know that we overlapped
the fact that it's
as
even beyond
governors.
2030.
And
So
I don't
NSF
think
is
there's
working towards
another
that.
governor that
And in
had a
partnership
strong
again, to earlier
bipartisan
question,
support.
public-private
She made
partnerships.
decisions,
We're working with a consortium of
not from
companies,
a political
Micron,
perspective, but
Intel,
what is the best
Samsung,
outcome.
Ericsson, and others.
She
In the
stole
state of
our best
Nebraska,
ideas, we stole her
since you
best
asked.
ideas. That's sort of the way
So
Governor's World
we are very
works.
thrilled again.
So
NSF's
we'll start with you,
investments span
Secretary
all
Raimondo.
parts of our nation,
As a former
energizing
governor,
community colleges,
I
universities,
appreciate
and so
the
on.
recognition
Let me give
in
you
your
a couple of
department
examples from
that
Nebraska.
innovation and
So
workforce
the
development
University of Nebraska
thrive when
EPSCoR
local communities
are to track
have an
one
active
award,
seat, not
which
just
is
a
$20
seat, but
million
an active seat at the table.
for the period of
We've been
21,
listening to the needs of our
2021,
communities,
2026.
and I think
is in this
Colorado is
participating in the
positioned itself as a
second
leader in
quantum
startup
revolution
creation and
by launching an
supporting
interdisciplinary,
entrepreneurs, generating a diverse
interdepartmental, and
workforce
multi-campus
in a
research and
range of
education
technology
cluster
fields,
focused on
advanced
emerging
manufacturing,
quantum materials
cybersecurity,
and
clean energy, quantum.
called Equate.
So
Is essentially
I don't
to
have to go
increase the
on.
jurisdiction's
I think the other senators have done a good job of
in the area
pitching their
quantum
states.
science and
I don't have to go
technologies.
on.
That's one example.
In
There is
either of
another
these questions,
project
regional
again,
hubs,
which we have an award
or
to the
the regional
Nebraska
innovation
Lincoln,
engines, why
which is a companion
Colorado's
to
so
the
well
Large
suited. But I do think
Hadron
it's-
Collider.
I would like to
work
ask
that
both
is
of you,
happening. So
to
here, we are
describe
essentially
how
supporting a
the
CMS
department
detector
and
and a
NSF,
supporting software
how will you
being developed
coordinate
at the University of Nebraska.
complementary,
So clearly, again,
regional
I
tech
want to
hubs
re-emphasize this
and-
point. You're going to
regional
tire
innovation
me saying this.
engines.
Talent
Senator,
and
let me
ideas
start
are
even before
everywhere,
the Chips and Science
and
Act.
it is our
Secretary
responsibility
Raimondo
to
and I,
find
as soon
them,
as she took
nurture
office,
them,
we spoke
motivate
the very
them,
next
and
week
bring them to life.
and said
That's
that
the
we are
only
going
way
to
we're going to
hyper-partner
outcompete other nations.
There is a term like that.
Thank you. There is no place
Because we
like
believe that
Nebraska.
this is in the
Thank
interest
you.
of
Thank
our
you, Madam
nation,
Chair.
of the taxpayers.
Senator
who
Hickenlooper, I'm going to
invest
ask you to
in both
chair while I run a
our,
vote, and then
agencies
follow
and
you will be
departments.
Senator Moran.
So we have been at NSF, in
And
fact,
Senator
we
Fisher,
have
I'll put in a
CHIPS
plug for
steering
Nebraska as well,
committee,
but only
which is
after
the
I put
office
in a
of the
plug for
director
Colorado.
that works almost on a daily
you, Madam
basis,
Chair.
on a weekly basis of synchronization.
It's great to see such a
with the
crowd here. I
Secretary's
feel a little
office
bit like
and
we're
their steering committee.
it's Sunday Night Football
Every
with Taylor
program
Swift
that
and
the
Travis
Secretary
Kelce.
talked about,
I haven't
the
seen
National
this
Science
many
and
people in this room
Technology Centers,
in
the
quite a
workforce
while.
development activities, the EDA activities,
Dr.
the regional technology hubs. Every one of those activities
I know
are
that
highly
you attract a
coordinated.
crowd and that
In
you
fact,
really
when the
devote
regional
yourself
technology
to
hubs
these issues.
announcement were being made, even the verbiage of the
Secretary
announcement
Raimondo,
was
just for you other
coordinated
senators
between
should know
NSF
that we
and Commerce and
overlapped
vice versa.
as
So
governors.
that's the level of coordination.
And I don't think there's
because we believe
another governor
that we don't
that
want
had
to
a
lose
strong
any of these
bipartisan
innovation and
support.
innovators
So she made
by having
decisions,
any of these valleys
not
of
from
death, as we
a
call
political
them.
perspective,
So
but what is the best
making sure that we are tightening those
She
gaps
stole our best
so that we
ideas,
can
we stole
carry
her
the
best
innovation
ideas.
all
That's
the
sort
way
of the
from
way
fundamental research
governance world
to apply
works.
translational
So
work.
we'll start with
to
you,
then into the
Secretary
innovation
Raimondo.
outcomes that we see.
As a former
Just
governor,
one quick addition
I
to that.
appreciate the recognition in
and it
your
was-
department
I agree, and it was
that
very, very well
innovation
said.
and workforce development
Everyone
thrive
knows,
when
if you talk
local
to
communities
industry and
have an
academia,
active seat,
everyone
not
will
just a
tell
seat,
you
but an active seat at the
NSF
table.
job training
And
programs
we've been
are,
listening to the needs of our
world-class.
communities, and
The
I think
curriculum, the
Colorado has
approach.
positioned itself as a
So
leader in
we
startup
want to
creation and supporting
learn from that.
entrepreneurs,
And then, of course, expand
generating a
expanded
diverse
because we now have all of this
workforce in a
additional
range
money.
of technology
But
fields.
in the NSTC, for
advanced
example,
manufacturing,
which we're going to
cybersecurity, clean
establish
energy,
this fall,
quantum.
NSF is a
So
founding
I don't have to go
member of
on.
that.
I
So we're
think the
really
other
trying
senators
to
have done a good job of
bake
pitching their
in
states.
the
I don't have
NSF
to
to
go on
everything we do, and
in
frankly,
either of these
leverage
questions,
all of their
regional
great
hubs,
work, especially around workforce training.
or the regional innovation engines.
You're way ahead of us.
Colorado's so well suited. But I do think it's. I would like to ask both of
Gina,
you to describe how the department and NSF
plus science
how
directs
you
the
coordinate
Office of Science and Technology
complementary
policy to develop the
regional
interagency national science and
regional
technology
innovation
strategy
engines to establish.
Senator, let me start. Even before the
national
Chips and
research
Science Act,
goals
Secretary
and,
Raimondo and I, as soon as she took
especially in terms
office,
of emerging
we spoke the very
technologies.
next week
And we've
said that
been
we are going to
looking at
hyper
how
partner.
research
There is a term
standards,
like that. And
new commercial
because we believe
applications
that
in the
this is
field
in
of
the interest
AI
of our
are going
nation,
to transform
of the taxpayers
not
who
just
invest in both
our economy, but our global
agencies and
competitiveness.
departments.
So I thought
So
it'd
we have
be
been,
useful just to get
at
what
NSF, in
priorities
fact, we
does
have
the
a CHIPS
department see
steering
are
committee,
important in this
which is in the
kind
office
of
of the director,
forthcoming
that works,
strategy to reflect
almost
in
on
the
a daily
the
basis,
field of AI.
on a weekly basis of synchronization.
So we
with the
should
Secretary's office
visit on
and their
this
steering committee.
when we have
So
more than
every
19
program
seconds to
that
talk about it.
the Secretary
But
talked about,
NIST,
the National Science
as
and
you well
Technology
know,
Centers, the workforce development
NIST
activities,
is the standard
EDA
setting body.
activities, the regional technology
They are
hubs. Every
kind of
one
the
of
lead
those
agency
activities
now
are
in the
highly
administration's
coordinated.
work on
In
AI.
fact, when the regional
They've already
technology
put out
hubs
their risk
announcement were
management
being
framework,
made, even
which
the
is,
verbiage of the announcement was
voluntary risk
coordinated
guides
between
for
NSF
developers
and Commerce
developing
and vice
AI.
versa. So that's
And
the
the
level of
special sauce
coordination we
of
have.
NIST
Because we
is
believe
that
that we don't
because
want
they're
to
a
lose
neutral
any
third
of these
party,
innovation and innovators
everyone trusts them.
by having any of these
Industry
valleys of death, as
will
we call
collaborate with them.
So that we are
Universities will
making sure that
collaborate
we are
with them.
tightening
And
those
that's the
gaps
entity that
so
will
we
be
can
forming
carry the innovation
new
all the way from fundamental
standards.
research
And,
to applied
candidly, and I know
translational
I'm out
work
of time,
to then into the innovation outcomes.
I think there will be a U.S.-led
quick
ecosystem
addition to that,
and we need of
and it was-
AI.
I
We
agree,
lead
and
the
it was
world.
very, very
And we
well
need to make
said.
sure that the standards
Everyone knows,
that
if
fuel
you talk
that
to industry
are
and academia,
consistent
everyone
with our
will tell
democratic
you
values.
NSF job
So
training
we can
programs
have a
are,
further discussion.
world-class.
No, absolutely.
The
And
curriculum, the
I
approach.
agree completely. And I
So
think NIST,
we want to
just to our large
learn
audience,
from
I
that,
think
and then
NIST
of course
is
expand
one of the
it
most
because we now
effective
have all of this additional
organizations
money.
we have in the government.
But in the
They do a remarkable
NSTC,
job
for
at it.
example, which
Almost
we're
impossible
going to
job.
establish
I mean,
this
a
fall,
remarkable success and
NSF
almost
is a
impossible
founding
job.
member of that.
All right,
So we're
I'll
really
yield,
trying
but I get to ask
bake
questions
in
later because
the
now I'm
NSF
chairman,
to
so I'll get to
everything
come
we
back.
do, and frankly leverage all of their
Senator
great work,
Thune.
especially around workforce training.
Mr. Chair, I would
You're way ahead of
my
us. That's
colleague,
very, very encouraging.
down, just to my right, Senator Moran,
Gina,
who has waited
Secretary Raimondo,
patiently,
Senator Moran,
very patiently,
CHIPS
to ask
and
questions.
plus Science directs the Office of Science and Technology
Thank you, Senator
policy
Thune,
to develop
for
the
yielding. And
interagency
thank you
national
to,
science and
Director
technology
and to the Secretary
strategy
for your presence with us today
to
and the work that
establish
you're doing to implement the Science and
national
Chips Act.
research goals, and,
I would,
especially in
would
terms
not
of
take
emerging
up my time,
technologies.
very much of my time
And we've
anyway,
been
to reiterate
looking at
what's
how
been said time and time
research
again in
and
regard to
standards,
rural and small business.
new commercial
Thank you.
applications in the field of AI
Director,
are going to
we might have a
transform
conversation in the future
not
about
just our
I'm pleased with
economy,
the
but our global
EPSCoR,
competitiveness. So I
you
thought
met
it'd be
the standard,
useful
the
just to
goal.
get what priorities does
I'd be
the
interested in
department
knowing
see
if there
are
are
important in
challenges
this
that you
kind
will
of
face in
forthcoming
meeting,
strategy
continuing to meet that,
to reflect in
or
the
exceed that goal in
field
the
of
future.
AI.
Secretary Raimondo.
So we should
could
visit
you
on
update
this
the committee,
when we have more than
on
19 seconds
on
to talk
your
about
efforts
it.
to
But
ensure rural states and small businesses
NIST,
benefit
as you
from
well
the CHIPS and
know,
Science Act, particularly
NIST is
via
the
the
standard-setting
tech
body.
hubs and CHIPS program.
They are kind of the
Yes,
lead
thank you,
agency
Senator.
now in the
So,
administration's work on
as I
AI.
said,
They've already put out their risk management
be putting out
framework,
the
which
tech hub
is
designations this fall.
voluntary risk guides for developers developing
There will
AI.
be geographic
And
representation,
the special
including
sauce
rural
of NIST
representation.
is that
Much of that
because
is
they're a
because
neutral third
we've
party,
been doing
everyone
outreach
trusts them.
to rural communities
So
to let them
industry
know
will
the money
collaborate with
exists,
them.
we want them to
Universities
apply,
will
and to help
collaborate with them.
apply.
And that's the entity that will be
as I said
forming
before,
the
it's
new
so
standards.
oversubscribed
And,
that I
you know,
have no
candidly, and I
doubt
know I'm out of
There'll be
time.
rural places we
I
would have
think
liked to
there
have
will be
invested
a
in that we won't be
U.S.-led
able to.
ecosystem.
With
we need
with the
of
CHIPS
AI.
part of
We
it,
lead the world.
just last
And we need
week
to make sure
we
that
put
the
out
standards
a
that fuel
funding
that
opportunity
are
for
consistent with our democratic
small
values.
and
So we can
medium-sized
have a
supply
further
chain
discussion.
companies.
No,
And
absolutely.
I promise you, we are going to work
I agree
overtime
completely.
to
And I think
have
NIST,
small suppliers,
just to our large
small,
audience, I think NIST is
chip
one of the most
companies
effective
eligible for the money.
organizations.
You have
out there.
reassured me of that at
They
least
do a
16
remarkable
times,
job
and
at
I'm
it.
thankful that it's
Almost
still true
impossible
today.
job. I mean,
Would you
a
describe,
remarkable success
Secretary,
and almost
the
impossible
process
job.
for evaluating
All
tech
right,
hub
I'll
applications?
yield, but I get to ask questions
In
later, 'cause now
particular,
I'm sharing, so I'll get to
what
come
role
back.
does the EDA regional offices play in that
Senator
process?
Thune.
So
Mr.
the
Chair, I
EDA,
would
it
yield to
is,
my
as I said
colleague,
before, it's a
down,
merit-based
just to my
process.
right,
We have
Senator Moran, who
national
has been
security
waiting
goals that we need to
patiently.
achieve.
Senator Moran.
Very
And
patiently
those are
to ask
primary.
questions.
Another thing we evaluate is likelihood of
Thank you,
success,
Senator
how
Thune,
strong is the
for yielding,
partnership.
and thank you to the Director
Is there
and to the
full
Secretary
buy-in
for your
from the
presence with us
community?
today and the work that you're doing to
The
implement the Science
decisions
and
are
Chips
going to
Act.
be made by a committee.
I would not take up my
DC,
time, very much of my
with
time anyway, to
advice and
reiterate what's
consultation
been
from
said
the
time
local
and time
offices.
again in regard to rural and
regional
small business.
Regional
Thank you.
offices, yeah.
Director, we might have a
Could
conversation
you
in
tell
the
me,
future about,
Secretary, if there is
I'm pleased with
value
the
in an
EPSCoR,
application for a tech hub
that you met the standard and the
originates
goal
by a state?
I'd be interested in knowing if there are
The
challenges.
tech hub
that
application
you will face in
originates
meeting-
by a
continuing to
state
meet
as
that
compared to
or
an
exceed
entity.
that goal in the future.
A different entity.
Secretary Raimondo.
I don't think that there's no
could you
preference
update the
either
committee
way. We're open.
on your timeline to ensure
for,
rural states
tech
and small
hub,
businesses benefit from
announcements,
the CHIPS and Science
tech
Act,
hub
particularly,
designees and development grant
via
awards,
tech hubs
This
and
fall.
CHIPS program.
As soon as possible. Yes, thank you, Senator. So,
then
as I said,
expect to see CHIPS program awards
we
at
will
what point in time?
be putting out
Also this
the
fall.
tech hub
Let me say this.
designations this fall.
I am moving as fast as I
will
can.
ensure that there will be
But it's more
geographic
important to get it right than move
including
fast.
rural
And
representation.
it depends on
Much of that is
companies
because
applying
we've
and having
been
good
doing
application.
outreach
Having
to
said
rural
that,
communities to let them know.
I hope
the money
tech
exists.
hubs will
We want them
be
to apply and to
in the
help
coming
them
weeks.
apply.
And
As I said
I
before,
hope we will
it's
have
so
some CHIPS
oversubscribed
funding
that I have no
announcements this
doubt
fall.
there'll be
Thank you
rural
for the
places we
explanation.
would have liked to
It's
have
one with which I
invested
agree.
in that we won't be able to.
Finally, I
With
want
the
to talk
CHIPS
about
part of
Huawei.
it, just last week,
Export
we put
controls
out,
on AI technology.
a funding opportunity for
Details about
small
what they seem to
and
have accomplished, what
medium-sized supply chain
Huawei has,
companies.
chips have
And I promise you,
what
we are
Huawei
going to
has
work
seemed to
overtime
accomplish.
to have
Details of
small
that
suppliers,
remain unclear.
small chip companies
We have a particular
eligible
interest
for the
in our
money.
appropriations
You have
process
reassured me of that at
in
least
the
16
Bureau of
times,
Industry
and
and
I'm
Security.
thankful that it's still true
within
today.
your department.
Would you
With
describe,
significant funding
Secretary,
boost in
the
FY
process for
2022.
evaluating
I'm
tech
sorry,
hub
2023. And in particular, I want to
what
get to
role
my
does
question
the
in the next
EDA regional
few
offices
seconds
play
that
in
I
that
have.
process?
What gaps remain in
So
U.S.
the EDA
technology
region,
export
it is, as I
restrictions
said before, it's a
that may have
merit-based
allowed a
process.
targeted
We
company
have
to
national security goals that we need to
manufacture an
achieve,
advanced
and those are
semiconductor.
primary. Another thing we evaluate is likelihood of success, how strong is the partnership.
when we have more time.
Let me just say,
is there full
the
buy-in
reports
from the
about
community?
Huawei are incredibly
The
disturbing.
decisions
and
are
although I
gonna be
can't
made
comment
by
on any
a committee,
investigations, I promise you,
in DC,
we take every credible
with
threat seriously
advice and
and
consultation
investigate
from the
to the
local
fullest
offices.
wherever we think there is some
regional
credible
offices.
regional offices. Allegation that a company has done an end run
Could you
around
tell me,
our
Secretary,
export
if there
controls.
is value in an application for a tech hub that
We
originates by a state?
we need different tools. I'm supportive of the
The
GUARD
tech hub
Act,
application
which
originates
would
by a state
and
as
the
compared
Restrict
to an
Act,
entity.
which would
Different entity.
codify our ICTS
I don't think that
authorities.
there's no preference
We
either
need
way.
that to
We're
have a
open.
comprehensive approach.
The timeline
to
for
go after
tech
connected
hub,
apps. We would need
announcements,
resources
tech hub designees
additionally
and
to do
development grant
that.
awards.
I think we need additional
This
resources
fall.
around enforcement
Yes.
to do exactly what you're talking about.
Then
Candidly, we need to,
expect
the
to see
threat
CHIPS
is different
program
today.
awards
The
at what
threat
point
from
in time?
China in 2023
Also this fall.
is
Let me say
different
this.
than the Cold War threats of
I am moving as
decades
fast as
ago.
I can.
It is technology,
But it's
it
more
is
important to
AI,
get it right
it is
than move
moving
fast.
fast,
And
and
it
so
depends on
I
companies
would
applying
welcome a
and
broader
having good
discussion with you
application. Having
around
said
how we
that,
modernize what we do
I
and how we
hope
properly
tech hubs
fund
will
what we do.
be
there's been
in the
lots of
coming
wake-up
weeks.
calls. Huawei is a
And
particular one that stands out.
I hope
received
we will have
significant attention.
some CHIPS funding announcements this
I would welcome
fall.
the chance. Thank you for the explanation.
direction,
It's one with which I
on
agree.
how we,
Finally,
operators or
I
authorizers
want to talk about
helpful
Huawei.
in closing
Yeah.
this
Export
opportunity
controls
for
on
China.
AI technology theft.
We will do it. I mean, I have to say I'm
Details
proud of the
about
fact that
what they seem
under
to
my
have
watch,
accomplished, what
we
Huawei
imposed the
has,
largest fine
chips
ever in history.
What Huawei has seemed to
$300 million
accomplish.
fine against a
Details
company
of
called
that
Seagate
remain unclear.
for violating our export
We have a
controls,
particular
selling
interest
to
in our
Huawei.
appropriations process
So
in
we're as
Bureau of
tough as
Industry
we
and
need to be,
Security,
but more
within your
resources would
department.
be helpful.
Was a significant funding boost in FY
Yes.
2022. I'm sorry, 2023.
Thank you.
I want to get to my question in the next few
Thank you,
seconds.
Chair
that I have.
Camwell.
What gaps remain
Thank
in
you,
U.S.
Mr. Ranking Member, for
technology
this important
export
hearing.
restrictions
Secretary,
that may
thanks
have
for being here.
allowed a
Director,
targeted
thank you
company
for being here.
to manufacture
Secretary
an
Raimondo
advanced semiconductor.
One thing I wanted to share with
this
you
is a-
and
this is a
also
critical
Chair
thing, and we
Cantwell
should visit when we
is
have more time. Let me
to
just
show
say,
support for
the
Ranking
reports about
Member
Huawei are
Cruz's
incredibly
question
disturbing.
to the
And although I
Secretary
can't
on
comment on any
mid-band spectrum and
investigations,
coordination
I promise
between the
you, we
Department of
take
Commerce
every
and
credible
Defense
threat
to ensure
seriously
more
and
mid-band
investigate
spectrum
to
is
the fullest
available for
wherever we think there
5G
is
wireless.
some credible
So I don't have a question at this time. I only
allegation that
wanted
a
to show
company has done an
support
end run around
for
our
the
export
request from
controls.
Senator Cruz and the commitment from the Secretary to brief Congress on the study
We are,
that the Department of Defense
we need
submitted
different
last week. So
tools. I'm
thank
supportive
you
of the
very
GUARD
much for
Act,
that.
which
As
would
you know, I'm
and the Restrict
proud of
Act,
New Mexico's long
which would
history
codify our
of connecting
ICTS
scientific
authorities.
innovation,
We need that to have a comprehensive
national security,
approach
global
to go after
competitiveness.
connected apps.
And for over
We need
75 years,
resources
our Department of
additionally to
Energy
do that.
national
I think we
labs
need
have
additional
served the
resources
nation with
around
their
enforcement to do
international
exactly what
leadership
you're
in
talking about.
scientific discovery
Candidly,
and
we need
innovation.
the threat is different
Created through
today.
chips
The
and
threat from
science, the
China in
NSF innovation
2023
engines
is
are
different
designed to
than the
create
Cold War
regional
threats
scale
of
innovation
decades ago.
ecosystems
It is
across the nation to
technology, it is
accelerate
AI,
the
it is
development of
moving
critical
fast, and so,
technologies.
I would be-
These
I would
innovation
welcome a
engines will
broader
provide another
discussion with you
opportunity for
around
states
how we
like New
modernize
Mexico
what we
to
do
support the
and how
nation
we
by
properly
driving the
fund what we
scientific
do.
innovation
There's been lots of
needed
wake-up
to
calls.
maintain
Huawei is a
international
particular one that
leadership.
stands out, receiving
Director,
some
I was
great
pleased that your testimony acknowledged a fact that we all know too well. The economic prosperity produced through scientific innovation has not been shared equally across our nation. My question, Director, yes or no, do you expect that the choice of regional innovation engines will provide economic opportunities to those communities that are too often
$300 million
overlooked?
fine against a company called Seagate for violating our export
I
controls,
appreciate that
selling
very
to
much,
Huawei.
and I will
So,
submit something
we're
to
as
get those
tough as we need
specific
to be, more
responses
resources
as
would
well.
be helpful.
I was happy to see that one of the 16 Innovation Engine finalists is the New Mexico Space Valley Coalition, which is dedicated to growing the nation's commercial space industry.
Member, for this important
The New
hearing.
Mexico Space Valley
Secretary,
Coalition
thanks
includes
for
the
being here.
city of
Director,
Albuquerque,
thanks for being here.
leaders from the private
Secretary
industry, universities
Raimondo,
across the state of New Mexico,
one thing I
including
wanted
Navajo
to share
Technical University.
with you and also Chair
Director, as you
Cantwell
already know, the coalition in New
is
Mexico
to,
is
show
an incredibly
support for
talented
Ranking
group that
Member
represents the diversity of
Cruz's
my state
question
and
to
the
the
United States of
Secretary on
America.
mid-band
By all
spectrum and
measures, the New
coordination
Mexico
between the
Space Valley
Department of
Coalition
Commerce
appears to
and
be a
Defense
perfect fit
to
for the
ensure more
innovation
mid-band spectrum is available
decision.
for 5G wireless.
The Chips and Science
So
Act
I don't have a
established
question at this
technology,
time. I only
innovation,
wanted to
and
show support
partnership director
for
at the National
request
Science
from Senator Cruz
Foundation.
and the commitment from
Of
the
those
Secretary
three
to
words,
brief Congress
technology,
on the
innovation,
study
and partnership,
that the Department of Defense
partnership
submitted last week.
is
So
very important.
Thank you very much for
By
that.
expanding authorities for
as
not
you
just
know,
the
I'm
National Science
proud of
Foundation,
New
but
Mexico's
also the
long
Departments of
history
Energy and Commerce.
of connecting
The Chips and
scientific
Science Act makes clear that
innovation,
no single department or agency can do
national
it
security,
alone.
global
The scientific
competitiveness,
challenges we face
and
are
for
too
over
big.
75
The timeline to
years,
meet
our
these challenges
Department
is
of
too
Energy
short,
national
and the international
labs have served the
competition
nation
is
with
too
their
strong.
international
I was pleased to
leadership
see
in
that NSF
scientific
and the Department of
discovery
Energy
and
signed
innovation.
an MOU to partner
Created
on
through
finding
chips and
solutions
science,
to
the
many of these
NSF
challenges.
innovation engines are
Director,
designed
yes
to
or
create
no, for the
regional
National
scale
Science
innovation
Foundation to
ecosystems
successfully implement
across
the
the
new
nation
authorities
to accelerate
provided
the
by
development
chips
of
and
critical
science. Will the agency
technologies.
need partners like
These
the
innovation
Department of
engines will
Energy?
provide
Another opportunity for
and we do
states
that
like
in
New
large
Mexico
measure with the
to
MOU,
support the nation by
and there are
driving
many
the
examples
scientific
again of that too.
innovation. Can you share
Needed
some
to
of those
maintain
examples that you
international
just shared
leadership.
through that MOU
Director,
as well,
I was
but others
pleased
that
your testimony
show
acknowledged
that
the fact
connection
that
and
we
that
all know
partnership
too
with
well.
the Department of Energy? The economic
We'll be happy
prosperity
to do that,
produced through
yes.
scientific innovation
Now,
has not
Secretary
been
Raimondo,
shared equally
thank
across
you for your
our
leadership
nation. My
for leading the
question,
Department
Director,
of Commerce.
yes or no, do you expect that the
especially in
choice
this
of
space
regional
where so
innovation
many of the
engines will
challenges,
provide economic
that we
opportunities
face as a country,
to those communities
will
that
fall
are too
under
often overlooked?
your leadership and the jurisdiction of the Department of Commerce and your team? We just heard
I
from the
appreciate
director
that
how
very
NSF
much,
is
and
partnering with
I
the
will
Department of
submit
Energy.
something to get those
Can
specific
you share with the committee how the Department of
responses
Commerce
as well.
is engaging the Department
I was
of
happy to
Energy
see
and the
that
national
one of the
labs in
16
implementing
Innovation
chips and
Engine
science?
finalists is
Yes,
the New
thank you.
Mexico
We
Space
also have an
Valley
excellent
Coalition, which is
cooperation
dedicated to
with the
growing the
Department of
nation's
Energy, and in
commercial
particular in
space
the,
industry. The New
National
Mexico
Science and
Space Valley
Technology
Coalition
Center,
includes
which
the
will
city
stand up
of
this
Albuquerque,
fall.
leaders from the
They,
private
along with
industry
NSF,
and
will be
universities
one of
across the state of New Mexico,
founding entities.
including Navajo Technical
and so they
University.
will have a
Director,
real
as you
role
already
to
know, the
play
coalition in New Mexico is an incredibly talented group that represents the diversity of my state and the United States of America.
plan to rely on
By
their
all
expertise
measures,
very
the New
heavily.
Mexico Space Valley Coalition
that very
appears to be
much.
a
And
perfect fit.
Madam Chair, as
for the
I
innovation
yield back,
engine decision.
I just want to know,
the Chips and
for the
Science Act
record, the
established
concern that I
technology
have, which is
innovation and
looking
partnership
at the
directed at the
aggressive
national
posture
science
from the administration
foundation.
solely for the
Of
national
those three words,
Science
technology,
Foundation
innovation,
top
and
line. I have a
partnerships.
concern when I'm
Partnership
looking at the top
is
line
very
for
important.
NSF compared to the
By
Department of
expanding
Energy
authorities
Office
for
of
not
Science,
just the
and
National
I think
Science
that Congress
Foundation,
and the
but also
administration
the
need to
Departments
expand
of
funding
Energy
for
and
both
Commerce
NSF and the
The
Office
Chips
of
and
Science
Science
at
Act makes
similar
clear
rates.
that no single
if
department
we're
or
going to work
agency
to make
can
sure
do
chips
it alone.
truly succeeds as well.
Scientific challenges we
So with
face
that,
are
thank
too
you, and I
big.
yield
The
back.
timeline to
Thank
meet
you.
these
Senator
challenges
Thune.
is too short, and the
Thank you,
international
Madam Chair.
competition
Secretary
is
Raimondo,
too
thank you
strong.
for being here today.
I was pleased to see that
I've been working with
NSF and the
members of this
Department of
committee on
Energy
both sides of
signed
the aisle
an
to
MOU to
develop a light
partner
touch
on finding
framework
solutions
for
to many of these
oversight of
challenges.
artificial intelligence. And as
Director,
I'm sure
yes
you
or
are
no
aware,
for the
AI is a
National
major
Science
focus for the
Foundation
Senate.
to
In
successfully
your written
implement the new
testimony, you
authorities
indicated that the
provided
Chips
by
and
Chips
Science
and
Act will help
Science.
enable
Will the
us to
agency
be the
need
global
partners
leader in
like the
emerging
Department of
technologies,
Energy?
and you specifically
Yes,
referenced the
and we
new
do that
National
in large measure with the
Semiconductor
MOU,
Technology Center.
and there are many
I'm
examples again of
focused
that.
on ensuring that
Can
the
you
Senate
share
puts the
some of
necessary
those examples
guardrails
that
in
you
place
just shared
while
through
also
that
ensuring
MOU as well, but
that
others
any
that,
legislation encourages
show that
and not
connection and that
stifles
partnership
innovation in
with the
AI.
Department of
So could
Energy?
you explain in more
We'll be happy
detail
to do that,
how
yes.
the National
Now,
Semiconductor
Secretary
Technology Center and the
Raimondo,
Chips and Science
thank
Act more
you for your
broadly
leadership
is encouraging
and for leading the
innovation in
Department of
artificial
Commerce.
intelligence?
Especially
you.
in this space where
I
so many of
agree
the
with you
challenges
strongly.
that we face as
The
a
United States has a
country
competitive edge in
will
the world
fall
right now.
under
We are leading
your
the world
leadership
in
and the
AI,
jurisdiction of the
and we need
Department
to
of Commerce and
preserve
your
that
team.
lead
We
and
just heard
extend that
from the
lead.
director
And
how
so we
NSF
have
is
to-
partnering with
we
the
have
Department
to
of
preserve our
Energy.
competitive
Can
edge.
you share with
Having
the committee
said
how the
that,
Department of Commerce is engaging
we
the
have to
Department of
balance
Energy
the
and the national
opportunity
labs in
with
implementing chips and
guardrails
science?
that make sure that we protect
Yes,
ourselves
thank
from
you.
the downside.
We also have an excellent
So
cooperation
NIST,
with
part
the
of
Department of Energy,
Commerce,
and in
has put out
particular in the
risk management
National
framework,
Science and
which is
Technology
voluntary,
Center,
which will stand up this
to
fall.
developers.
They,
for
along with
safeguards they
NSF,
should
will be one
use
of the
as they develop
founding
new
entities.
AI algorithms.
And so they will have
similar to
a real role to play.
the voluntary
in
commitments that the President and the
establishing
administration have
the center,
extracted
defining
from the
the
biggest AI
priorities.
developers.
And
With respect to the NSTC,
we plan to rely on their
that will
expertise very
be
heavily.
research and
appreciate that very
development.
much. And
So whether
Madam
it's
Chair, as I
new
yield
materials,
back,
new
I
ways
just
to
want
develop
to
new
note
semiconductor
for the record
chips,
the concern
right?
that
All
I have,
AI is going to be
which
powered
is
by AI chips,
looking
where
at
again we
the
lead the world.
aggressive posture
I think
from
the
the
NSTC
administration
will have
solely for the
collaborations
National
with universities
Science
and
Foundation
companies
top line. I have a
to
concern
lead the next
when
wave
I'm
of
looking at the
research and
top line for
development and
NSF compared to the
startups,
Department
so
of
we
Energy
continue to
Office of
maintain our AI
Science. And
lead.
I think that Congress
Thanks,
and the administration need to
This
expand funding for
administration
both NSF and the
continues
Office of
to
Science
push
at
for
similar rates.
public utility style
if we're
regulations
going to work
on the
to make sure
internet.
chips truly
USDA
succeeds
has
as well.
tried to
So with
insert
that,
so-called
thank you, and I
net
yield back.
neutrality
Thank you.
rules
Senator
in its
Thune.
Reconnect program. NTIA
Thank
has
you, Madam
thrown
Chair. Secretary
in a
Raimondo,
number of
thank
extraneous
you for being here
requirements in the
today.
BEAD program.
I've been working
Just
with members
last
of this
week, the
committee on both sides of the aisle to
FCC
develop
announced
a
that it
light
will
touch
be reinstating the
framework for
Obama-era
oversight of
Title II
artificial
regulations on the
intelligence,
internet. As I'm sure you are
Don't
aware,
ask me
AI is
why.
a major focus for the
You would
Senate.
want to regulate
In your
the
written
internet as a
testimony, you
depression
indicated that the
era
Chips and
monopoly,
Science Act
but
will help enable
they seem to be
us
headed
to be the
back down
global
that
leader
road.
in emerging
With
technologies.
respect to
And
the
you
BEAD
specifically
program,
referenced the new
I find it
National
troubling that the
Semiconductor
administration
Technology
would
Center.
put over $40 billion
I'm focused on ensuring that the Senate
broadband
puts the
funding
necessary
at risk
guardrails in place
just
while
to
also
accomplish
ensuring
a
that any
campaign
legislation
talking point.
encourages
And what I would
not
argue is that
stifles
instead we
innovation
should
in
be
AI. So could you explain
establishing
in more
efficient
detail
BEAD
how
rules
the
that
National
incentivize
Semiconductor Technology Center and the
companies that have
Chips and
spent
Science Act more
years
broadly
building
is
out
encouraging
reliable networks
innovation in
to some of the
artificial
most remote
intelligence
parts of the country?
Will
Thank
you
you.
commit to not
I
require
agree with
states to
you
include
strongly.
specific price
The United
points
States
for
has a
broadband
competitive edge
offerings
world
in
right
their
now. We are
BEAD
leading the world
plans?
in AI.
Yes or no?
And we need to preserve
Yes,
that
we do not
lead
require that.
And
I want to be
extend
clear.
that
We are
lead.
not rate
And so
regulating.
we are not price
We have have to preserve our competitive edge. Having said that, we have to balance the opportunity with guardrails that make sure that we protect ourselves from the downside. The way we're doing is every state, NIST, your state, part of the Department of Commerce, has put out create a plan that they think risk management framework, which is voluntary. And then our job would be to evaluate that before for safeguards they should use
All right,
as
so
they develop
you would
new
commit that
AI
NTIA will
algorithms.
give states discretion how to implement.
the voluntary
low-cost and
commitments that the
middle-class
president and the
affordability
administration have extracted from the biggest AI developers.
In 2022,
With respect to the NSTC,
I introduced the Quantum Network Infrastructure and Workforce Development Act,
research and
HASN,
development.
which is
So
was
whether
ultimately
it's
enacted
new
as part of the Chips and
materials,
Science Act, and among other
ways
things, the
to
bill
develop
asks
new
to
semiconductor
build on the
chips,
expertise of
right?
NIST
All
to
AI
improve
is going to be
existing
powered by
research on
AI
quantum
chips,
networking
where
and
again we
encryption.
lead the world.
These
I think the
applications have the
NSTC
potential
will
to
have
greatly enhance network
collaborations with
security, protect
universities and
privacy while
companies
bolstering U.S.
to
leadership and
lead the
competitiveness
next
in the
wave of
development of
research
these
and development and
technologies.
startups.
Could you
so we continue
describe
to
how the
maintain our
department
AI
has
lead.
worked to promote U.S. competitiveness and innovation
This administration
development and standardization of
push
quantum
for
technologies,
public utility
style
style
regulations on the
bill.
internet?
I'd be
USDA
happy to-
has tried
and
to
I will
insert
follow up
so-called
with
net
Dr.
neutrality
Locascio, who
rules
runs
in its
NIST, but I
Reconnect
can tell you
program.
that quantum
NTIA has
as
thrown
well-
in a
quantum
number of
AI
extraneous
and chips
requirements in
are
the BEAD
areas where
program.
we are
And just last week, the
exceedingly
FCC
focused, to develop
announced that it will be
standards and to
reinstating the
focus our
Obama-era Title II
investments.
regulations on the internet.
Thank you.
Don't
Thank you,
ask
Madam
me
Chair.
why.
Thank you. Senator Peters.
You would want to regulate
Thank you,
the
Madam Chair,
internet
and
as a
to our
depression
witnesses,
era
welcome. It's good to
monopoly,
see both
but
of you here,
they
and
seem
thank
to
you
be
for
headed
all
back
the
down
great
that
work that
road.
you do.
With respect to the
Secretary
BEAD program,
Raimondo, I believe
I find it troubling
in
that the
order to be a great
administration would
country
put over
that
$40
you actually
billion
have to make, things,
in
and it has
broadband
to be our
funding at
focus. You and I
risk
have
just
talked
to
about that
accomplish
before,
a
and one of
campaign
the
talking
primary
point.
goals of the
And what I
Chips
would argue
and
is that
Science
instead
Act
we should be
was to increase
establishing
domestic production
efficient BEAD
of
rules
mature
that incentivize the
semiconductor chips
participation
to
of
address
companies that have spent
the crisis
years
that we saw in the
building
automotive
out reliable
supply
networks
chain.
to some of the
Crisis
most
that was
remote parts
preventing
of the country.
consumers from being able to
Will you
purchase
commit to
vehicles,
not
and
require states
resulted
to
in
include
furloughs of
specific
auto
price
workers,
points for
due to the
broadband
shortage
offerings
of,
in their
mature
BEAD
chips?
plans?
Like we had parking
Yes
lots
or no?
full of
Yes,
automobiles
we do not
and
require
pickup
that.
trucks
I
and
wanna
other
be clear.
vehicles
We
that
are
just
not
needed
rate
a chip or
regulating.
two
We are
before
not
they
price
could
setting,
head off
and
to
we are
the
not
dealer.
requiring states
Your
to do that.
department has
Furthermore,
pledged to
we
spend
want
$10 billion
all
in the
providers,
CHIPS
large
funding
and small,
to fix that. And certainly
to
love to have an
participate
update
in the
on that, but
program.
hope
The way we're doing
that
is
your
every
commitment
state,
will
your
stand
state,
through
your
the
governor
full
would
expenditure of that
create a
necessary
plan that they
investment
think
in that
could meet the
industry.
needs of your state.
But in addition to
and then
making
our job
more
would be to
mature
evaluate
chips
that
here in
before
America, we must also
fund
use
the
the
plan.
Chips and
All right,
Science
so
Act to
you would
invest
commit that
in the future
NTIA
of the
will give
automotive
states
industry.
discretion how to
And that
implement
means research and
the
development.
low cost and middle class
Michigan
affordability
stakeholders have
requirements.
already mobilized to meet that challenge.
In 2022,
and one example is the
I
STAR
introduced the
initiative
Quantum Network
to establish
Infrastructure
a
and Workforce
semiconductor
Development
center
Center,
of excellence
HASN,
in
which
Michigan,
was ultimately
led by
enacted as
the
part of the Chips and
internationally
Science
renowned
Act, and among
research
other things, the
center,
bill asks
IMEC,
to
Semiconductor
build on the
Equipment
expertise of NIST to improve
Manufacturer,
existing research in
University
quantum
of
networking
Michigan
and encryption.
and Washington
These
Community
applications
College.
have the potential to greatly
STAR
enhance
initiative
network
will
security,
focus on
protect
advanced
privacy while bolstering U.S. leadership and
electronic research
competitiveness in
for
the development of these
vehicle
technologies.
electrification.
Could you
and
describe
autonomous
how the department
automotive
has worked to
solutions.
promote
These
U.S.
innovative
competitiveness and
solutions
innovation in the
will help
development
cement the United
and
States
standardization
leadership,
of quantum
not only
technologies,
in the
including through the
future of
implementation of this bill?
semiconductors, but also in the future
I'd be happy
of the
to,
automotive
and I will
industry.
follow up with Dr.
So my question
Locascio,
for you,
who
Secretary
runs
Raimondo,
NIST,
as
but I
you
can tell you that
disseminate
quantum,
CHIPS R&D funding in the
quantum,
coming months,
AI, and chips
will you commit
are
to
areas
considering
where
the
we are
crossover
exceedingly
impacts that
focused,
semiconductor
to
R&D
develop
projects can
standards
have
and to focus
on other
our
industries,
investments.
like the automotive industry,
Thank you.
as a
Thank
way
you,
to
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Peters.
maximize the impact. Thank you, Madam Chair, and to our witnesses,
I will,
welcome.
but let me
It's
say
good to
this.
see both of
As
you
you know,
here,
the
and thank you
statute,
for all the great work that
as
you do.
well know, the statute
Secretary
requires
Raimondo,
$2 billion
I believe
set aside
in
for
order
the
to be a
mature
great
node
country, that
chips.
you actually have to make
And,
things.
we
it has
have
to be
said
our
that
focus. You and I have talked about that before,
believe we'll
and one
invest
of
close to
the
$10
primary
billion
goals of the
in
Chips
supply
and
chains,
Science
mature
Act
and-
was to
and
increase
current
domestic
node
production
chips.
of
And
mature
that is still our plan.
semiconductor chips
We
to
think
address
that's what's
the
necessary to
crisis
get
that
the
we
job
saw
done.
in the automotive
With
supply
respect
chain.
to your other
The crisis that was preventing
question,
consumers from being
early
able
in the new
to purchase
year, we will be
vehicles
getting
and
the,
resulted in furloughs of auto workers due to the
NOFO
shortage
out,
of
the funding
mature chips. In
opportunity
fact, we had
for the
parking lots full
R&D
of
portion.
automobiles and
I
pickup
will
trucks and other
commit
vehicles that
certainly
just
to
needed
work with
a
you
chip or two
between now
before
and
they
then
could
as we
head off to
design
the
that
dealer.
application
Your
before putting it
department President
early
has
in the new
pledged
year.
to spend
But I do want to
$10
be
billion
clear, and I've said
in
this
the
all
CHIPS
along,
funding
the point
to
of the
fix
CHIPS
that.
program
And
isn't
certainly,
just
we'll have an
to
update on that, but hope
incentivize
your
a few new
commitment will
fabs and
stand
call it a
through
day.
the full
Right? It's not-
expenditure of
that's
that
not enough. That is
necessary
not success.
investment
That's
in that
necessary but
industry.
insufficient.
But in
The
addition
point
to
is do
making
exactly as you
more
say.
mature
It's
chips
to
here in America, we
stimulate
must
research
also
and
use the
development. It's
Chips
to
and Science
stimulate,
Act to invest
job
in the
training,
future of the automotive industry.
and to have
And that
a
means
whole
research
ecosystem
and development.
that
Michigan
longer
stakeholders have already
that we need to
mobilized to
deepen in the
meet that
United
challenge.
States,
And one
including
example is the STAR
applications like
initiative
in the auto
to
industry.
establish
So
a
we're in
semiconductor
violent
center
agreement on
of
this.
excellence in Michigan,
And,
led by the internationally
I look
renowned
forward to
research
working
center, IME.
Well, I'll look forward to that as
Semiconductor
well.
equipment manufacturer. Raised another issue related to University of Michigan and semiconductors, and that's advanced packaging. The STAR initiative will focus on advanced supply chain, as you well know. Electronic research, I believe, needs significant focus as part of our onshoring efforts to bring this back to the United States. These innovative, because of its important solutions, from a national security perspective and for leadership, American workers, not only in the future of Calumet Electronics in Calumet, Michigan, with the help of incredible. My question for you, Secretary Raimondo, as Michigan technological university funding in the coming months is doing incredible work. Will you commit to considering the crossover, particularly by making very advanced semiconductor R&D projects can defense and other industries, and they're expanding the automotive industry capacity as a way to my question for you the impact of these funds as we try to ensure the supply chain is supported. Can you speak to how advanced packaging will be prioritized in funding going forward?
Set aside.
Yes.
For the mature node
This fall, we'll be
chips.
putting out a strategy paper on
we
our
have said
packaging
that
strategy,
we
our plan. So you'll be able to see
we'll
that
invest
soon.
close to $10 billion.
But let me tell you this: right now, we don't really do
mature
advanced packaging in the United States.
Current
it is a
node
huge
chips.
problem that doesn't get much attention.
That is still our plan.
Even if we make the chips in the United
States
States and then ship them
with
to Asia
respect
to
to your
other
that
question,
secure,
early in the new
year,
we will be getting. So we are deeply committed at the end of this NOFO implementation
funding opportunity
to have advanced packaging on our shores.
And I will,
as I say,
commit
this year
certainly
we'll
to work with you
more
between now and
details
then as we design
Senator
that
Blackburn.
application before putting it out early in the new year.
Thank
But I
you,
do want to be
Madam
clear,
Chairman.
and I've said this all along,
Let me
the point of the
stay
CHIPS
with this
program
issue
isn't
on
just
the
to
fabs, and
incentivize
I
a
had
few new
looked at
fabs
your
and call it a
notice
day.
of funding
It's not, that's not
opportunity
enough. That is
when you
not
were
success.
talking about
That's
we could have
necessary
as
but
many
insufficient.
fabs as we
The
want.
point is to do
and
exactly as you say.
How we
It's
have to move forward
stimulate
on this
research
with
and
the supply
development.
chain.
It's to stimulate
So my
job
question
training,
for you is
and to
looking at
have
the
a whole
investment tax
ecosystem
credit.
that no
And
longer
should Congress
that we need to
look at
deepen in the United States,
harmonizing
including
the investment
applications
tax
like in
credit
the auto industry.
48D
So we're in
to
violent
align
agreement on
with
this.
the program that
And,
you are running to ensure that
and,
the
I look
law
forward to working with you.
allows
Very
for
good. Well, I look forward to
manufacturing
that
for
as
the
well.
facilities that you
raised another
claim
issue
are going to
related
be
to,
necessary and for being able to
semiconductors, and that's advanced
reshore
packaging,
much of that
which is
activity.
a significant part of the
And
chip supply
then
chain, as you
how
well
are
know,
you
that
working
I believe needs
with
significant focus as
Secretary
part of
Yellen
our
on this?
onshoring efforts to bring this back to the
So,
United States.
I'll leave it to Congress
because of its
to
importance both from a
decide
national security
if
perspective
how
and
you
for
might want to
American
amend
workers and
legislation.
consumers.
The legislation is currently
Calumet Electronics
crafted,
in Calumet, Michigan, with the help of
has the
incredible
tax credit
engineers
being
from
more
the
restrictive
Michigan Technological
than the
University
CHIPS
up in
Act.
Houghton,
Than the grant.
is doing
So
incredible work on
it's
advanced
intended by
packaging, particularly by
statute
making
that the
very advanced
tax
printed
credit is
circuit
more
boards for
restrictive than
defense
the grant
applications.
program.
Yes, my
And they're
question is, should
expanding
we
their
harmonize
capacity.
that?
My question for you is,
once again,
as we try to
I have to
ensure the
think about
supply
that,
chain
to
is
be very
supported, can you
honest.
speak
If you
to
want to get
how
back to
advanced
me on that,
packaging
I
will
think
be
your insight on
prioritized in
this
funding going
is
forward?
something that
Yes.
is important.
Okay. This fall, we'll be putting out a strategy
Dr.
paper
Punch,
on our
again,
packaging
we
strategy,
almost got
our
you
plan.
into
So
a
you'll
UT
be able to see
jersey
that soon.
when you
But
were
let me tell you
there
this: right
in
now, we don't really
Tennessee,
do advanced
and we'll
packaging
get
in the
you
United
back.
States.
Let's
it is a
talk
huge
little
problem
bit
that doesn't get much
about,
attention.
microelectronics
Even if we
and
make the chips in the United States
lithography.
and then ship them to
And
Asia
the
to be
work that is
packaged,
being done
that
there,
doesn't
what are you
secure,
doing to make certain
doesn't hit our
that we
national
don't
security
have several
goals.
different
So we are
agencies
deeply
that are working
committed
on
at
this,
the
but we're
end of
not
this
harmonizing that work?
implementation
Senator,
to have
it was
advanced
great to be with
packaging
you.
on our shores.
And,
And as I say, later
at
this
the
year, we'll
University
put
of
out
Tennessee in
more
Knoxville,
details on the
where
strategy.
we announced the
Senator
Regional
Blackburn.
Innovation Engine, which I keep talking about.
Thank you,
This was
Madam
focused on
Chairman.
transportation, electrification,
Let me
and
stay
digitization.
with this issue
And specifically
on
to
the
your
fabs,
question,
and
we
I
have very
had
tight
looked at your
partnerships
notice
with
of
all of the
funding
agencies
opportunity
in topical
when you were
areas
talking
that
about
brings
we
us
could have as
together.
many fabs
For
as we
example,
want.
we have an MOU with
So
the
you're
Department of
watching
Energy.
how we have to move forward on
Absolutely.
this.
Absolutely.
That's what I wanted to hear.
I know
My
people in
question for
Tennessee
you
wanted to know
is
that.
looking at the investment
Secretary,
tax
I want
credit.
to talk a little bit about your
And
trip to China.
should
Did you think
Congress
it was a
look at
success?
harmonizing the
It was a productive
investment
trip,
tax credit
certainly.
in 48D?
Were you able to hold them to
much of that activity? And then how are you working with Secretary Yellen on this?
So, I'll leave it to Congress to decide if and how you might want to amend the legislation. The legislation as currently crafted has the tax credit being more restrictive than the CHIPS Act, than the grant. So it's intended by statute that the tax credit is more restrictive than the grant program.
Yes, my question is, should we harmonize that?
Once again, I have to think about that, to be very honest.
If you want to get back to me on that, I think your insight on this is something that is important.
Okay.
So, Dr. Punch, again, we almost got you into a UT jersey when you were there in Tennessee, and we'll get you back. Let's talk a little bit about microelectronics and ultraviolet lithography and the work that is being done there. What are you doing to make certain that we don't have several different agencies that are working on this, but we're not harmonizing that work?
Senator, it was great to be with you and at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, where we announced the Regional Innovation Engine, which I keep talking about. This was focused on transportation, electrification, and digitization. And specifically to your question, we have very tight partnerships with all of the agencies in topical areas that brings us together. For example, we have an MOU with the Department of Energy.
So you're watching the duplication.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
That's what I wanted to hear, and I know people in Tennessee wanted to know that.
Yes.
Secretary, I want to talk a little bit about your trip to China. Did you think it was a success?
It was a productive trip, certainly.
Were you able to hold them to account?
I was clear that there'll be no negotiation on anything related to national security or export controls.
And did you call them out about committing genocide against the Uyghur Muslims?
I did.
And their response?
I didn't get much of a response.
Okay. And have you visited Taiwan?
I have not.
Any reason for that?
I have had no reason to visit Taiwan.
No reason to visit Taiwan? And even though they're a primary supplier of a lot of chips, do you consider Taiwan a country?
The administration's policy is clear on Taiwan, and
so you're not going to deviate from that?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. I think that we are all very concerned about continuing to bolster our leadership, whether it is going to deal with semiconductors, broadband, AI, quantum, the microelectronics that we were just discussing, and we cannot afford to fall behind the CCP. We just can't, and it's going to take calling them out on this and holding them to account. And in my opinion, it is going to take supporting Taiwan and the work that they are doing. And of course, we've got to make certain that the CCP-controlled entities don't benefit as we move forward implementing chips. And I think it's also, Madam Chairman, one of the reasons that we've got to get busy with the NQIA and make certain that we get that reauthorized this year. And I had read the article in The Hill where they mentioned that quantum computing capabilities are things that the Chinese Communist Party is going to use to bolster their surveillance and their satellite movements. And as you look at this, it is imperative that we not give them 1 inch. And I think that sending that message that, yes, indeed, Taiwan is someone we can work with and they want to have our business is something that's important. Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Senator Welch. And I just asked the members, we are on a tight time frame with our witnesses, and we want to get through everybody, so just keep to your time if you can. Senator Welch.
I will. Secretary Raimondo, first of all, I think you're doing a great job, and we're excited in Vermont about the CHIPS Act. And I thank my colleague, Todd Young, who played such an instrumental role in getting that passed. We have real production of gallium nitrate chips, printed on silicon chips, and that's a new technology that is providing greater power. Global Foundries, which is a very large company in Vermont, is a leader in this. And I want to give you an opportunity to explain what the department is doing to continue to incentivize the development and manufacture of mature legacy node semiconductor technology.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Nice to see you. As I said, the statute requires that we invest at least $2 billion in grants in legacy nodes. We believe that we will invest significantly more than that because these are the chips that are essential. I will say we've also executed an MOU with the Department of Defense whereby they can share information with us around their needs for the defense industrial base. Much, if not most, of the defense industrial base needs these existing node, mature node, and legacy chips. So that is another reason why we are so focused on making sure we have enough supply in the United States.
Thank you. Another question of real interest to us in Vermont are the regional tech hubs program that, of course, as you know, was part of Chips and Science. We've got applicants, and is there a commitment from the EDA and the Department of Commerce to follow the requirements in that program around rural and EPSCoR states, and that Vermont would be among them?
Yes, of course.
And the deadline for phase 1 solicitations was August 15th, and there's a lot of interest in knowing when we're going to hear. And I don't know if you can comment on that, but it would be good to have some visibility into when we can expect an answer.
Yes, Senator, as I said earlier, we are working as fast as we can. We've received over 400 applications from nearly every state. I hope to be able to have news in the next month or so.
Okay, thank you very much. And I wanted to ask Dr. Panchanathan a few questions. We really appreciate all that the ACT is doing and you're doing to help clean energy innovators from the development stage all the way through commercialization. And all of us are a little bit blue about how we developed solar, but then we lost commercialization to China. So I want to give you an opportunity to express what you're doing to ensure that the Directorate of Technology is bringing clean energy technologies from the research phase to the commercialization phase in the U.S.
Thank you very much, Senator Welch, for the opportunity to weigh in on this. In May of this year, we announced the first ever NSF Engines Development Awards, which I talked about. 7 of those awards include sustainable energy as a topic area. In August, we announced 16 NSF Engine finalist proposals. 2 of those include the topic areas of sustainable energy. In addition to that, many of our existing programs that is in the translation phase in terms of what you refer to as resulting in startups or small companies being invested in, the SBIR and STTR programs have also got significant clean energy portfolios as well. So as an example, the Vermont startup Rich Earth LLC is aiming to leverage clean energy technologies while in the process of optimizing wastewater treatment for nutrient and water recovery. So TIP has also launched the Accelerating Research Translation Program. So there's a number of those activities that is focused on clean energy and sustainable energy. So I hope that
thank
this
you.
addresses your
I want to
question.
stay within the chair's concern, and I just want to make a comment about working with us on the letter of credit that's going to hammer us if it stays at its current level in the BEAD program. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. Senator Vance.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Secretary Raimondo and a witness for being here. I appreciate it. I want to say, or at least echo, some of the comments that colleagues from across the aisle have made of my colleague, Senator Young, and some of the great works done on the CHIPS Act. I, of course, wasn't here when the CHIPS Act was passed, but I certainly would have supported it because I think it's important to bring American manufacturing, especially in high technology industries, back to our country. There have been many stories and many questions raised since the CHIPS Act was passed about its implementation and also how companies are benefiting or not from some of its resources. I want to focus on one particular barrier, just to start out with Secretary Raimondo, which is the labor shortage. You hear a lot from folks who are working in the chip industry that we have a labor shortage. You hear this, of course, from Taiwan Semiconductor, which has tried to build a $40 billion facility in Arizona and is effectively trying to import skilled engineers from Taiwan because they say they can't get the labor from here. Is that an accurate assessment of the situation, that we have, of course, the need to produce chips in America, but we also have a shortage of skilled labor and recruiting the people to actually make those chips?
Yes, it is. Listen, I think, and as we have said, we will be using some of the CHIPS Act to devote to labor and training and workforce. And in fact, since the passage of the bill, over 50 community colleges have started new initiatives to train people, but there is no question. We think we'll create about 500,000 jobs, at least, through the implementation, and we need to do more to train people to that.
So being mindful of time, Secretary Raimondo, I want to point to a particular set of implementation criteria that, in light of the admitted labor shortage, gives me some concern. So one of the administrative directives says that applicants to CHIPS funding must, quote, develop an equity strategy in concert with their partners to create equitable workforce pathways for economically disadvantaged individuals in their region. Additionally, applicants must recruit from diverse sources of talent and, quote, set and publicly communicate goals for workplace diversity. Now, I note, of course, that creating these diversity mandates within a company actually requires additional costs. You have to hire diversity consultants. You have to hire additional human resources people. And so I guess I'm struggling to make sense of the fact that we apparently have a shortage of skilled labor to manufacture chips on the one hand, and yet the Secretary of Commerce is telling people that they can only hire the people who check the right diversity boxes. That doesn't make a ton of sense, and it seems to be counterproductive to the goal of bringing this industry back to the United States in the first place.
So first of all, there are no mandates. Second of all, it's completely consistent.
What would you call it, Secretary Raimondo, when the Secretary of Commerce says you must do this in order to receive funding? If it's not a mandate, what is it?
What it is that we are telling them they have to show us a workforce plan, and we need to evaluate that plan.
They have to show us a workforce plan in order to receive money from their federal government, and that is the definition of a mandate. You must do X in order to receive Y dollars. Let me make this point, Secretary Raimondo. Look, think about this from the perspective of a company that is thinking about locating a chip fabrication facility in this country or in China. From China, they get cheap labor, massive subsidies, and a government that seems to want to work with them. From the United States, they get a little bit of money and a human resources statement that looks like it was written by a 22-year-old gender studies graduate of Harvard or Yale, which, let's be honest, it probably was written by a 22-year-old gender studies graduate of Harvard or Yale. Why would you locate your facility in the United States of America when you get a human resources lecture from us, but from China you get a whole lot of money and a whole lot of facilitation for your business? What's the market economy here? Is it the economy that makes it hard to do business or easier to do business? I'm curious, where would you locate the facility given those two separate sets of criteria?
Sir, before I went to China, I talked to about 120 CEOs of U.S. businesses, and they all told me that China is becoming increasingly uninvestable. I think there's no doubt that I would locate my business in the United States.
I agree with you, and I agree these companies should locate their business in the United States, but we have to be careful. The reason that China has become uninvestable is because it's very, very hard to get our money out. But if we make it harder to do business, and if we pass bipartisan legislation that puts money into American manufacturing, and then we make it harder to access it unless you check the diversity box, we're going to be extremely counterproductive. I am mindful that I am at the end of my time. The last point that I'd make, Secretary Raimondo, the United States, thank God, does not have a chief diversity officer. I would appreciate it if the Biden administration didn't pretend to be one. Thank you.
My job is to protect taxpayer money, and in order to do that, these companies have to be able to meet their mission, and in order to do that, they need to have a trained workforce, and I'm going to work with them to make sure that happens.
I don't think diversity mandates are part of that. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it, and thank you for holding this important hearing. And Secretary Raimondo, Director Panchanathan, thank you for your testimony today. It's really appreciated. I want to take a moment to recognize the work that Secretary Raimondo and Director Panchanathan have done to implement the CHIPS and Science Act. You have built a team that has gone above and beyond to quickly and efficiently roll out these programs so that we can strengthen our STEM workforce and bring good paying jobs right here at home. To everyone's point, that's what we want. And so we've talked a lot about advanced manufacturing. Of course, we passed the CHIPS and Science. We've been all talking about this. We want to bring manufacturing back to America. We want to create those good paying jobs here. And as we do this, again, everyone's talking about creating the workforce with the training and skills necessary. I am proud to support that bill, and I'm proud that it included language that I drafted with Senator Blackburn to provide funding, workforce education, training, and development in advanced manufacturing. And this provision was based on my bipartisan Advanced Manufacturing Jobs in America Act. So, Director, can you please provide us an update on the implementation of the workforce provision? And then Secretary Raimondo, can you talk a little bit after that, how we include our smaller communities and our rural communities in being sure that they can grow out advanced manufacturing?
Thank you very much, Senator. Again, I want to say it was a pleasure being in Reno, Nevada, announcing the Regional Innovation Engine there. I'll come to that in a moment. To answer your question, NSF received $200 million over 5 years to establish the workforce development plans focused on microelectronics. But as you know, NSF is the STEM workforce development agency for the country in all aspects of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in terms of the broad-based mandate, which focuses on K-12 as well as university, community colleges, and beyond. So this $25 million investment in FY23 and FY24 is focused on bringing up, as I said earlier, training upwards of 100,000 new semiconductor researchers, practitioners, technicians, and educators, fulfilling a key need of the semiconductor industry through FY 2027 and beyond. So our funds have been used primarily in the partnerships that we have had with Intel and Micron to scale it, as well as the Future of Semiconductors program, as well as computer science for US program, and specifically focused on microelectronic and semiconductor workforce development. I'm happy to talk more about this in the interest of time. I just want to make sure that I'm respectful of the overall time constraints that the chair talked about. But I'm happy to say that in Reno, Nevada, we are involving the Truckee Meadows Community College in training the talent towards lithium mining, processing, as well as recycling. Thank you.
That's great. I have a lot to talk about there, and we love our community colleges in Nevada.
Just to, nice to see you, Senator. Just to briefly add on to what Panch said, last Friday, we put out an additional funding application for small suppliers. Additionally, as I've said earlier today, we are committed to investing in or providing grants to small, medium, and large semiconductor companies. In fact, as we've talked about, the United States lost about 25% of its small manufacturers in the past 25 years. Many of them are specialty chemical companies or material companies. And so we are very much interested to partner with these companies in the CHIPS program to build out the entire supply chain all over the United States.
Well, Secretary Raimondo, I know I have a minute left, so I'm going to be very quick. I want to build on this in the rural areas and in the mining areas that the Director talked about too. I'm a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. We're thinking a lot about the national security implications of our critical mineral supply chains. These minerals are in the ground in rural Nevada. It is really important. We're the nation's leader in hard rock mining and battery recycling. And so talking about our workforce, talking about all the things we can do, what more can Congress do to bolster our critical minerals workforce, strengthen our supply chain? And of course, for us, that's really going to help our small and rural communities in Nevada.
I think we need to continue to focus on it. We need a comprehensive national plan as it relates to critical minerals, which is essential for electric vehicles and semiconductors. We at the Commerce Department are trying to build and have asked for, I think, $20 million to set up a supply chain office in the Commerce Department so we can be proactive, not just reactive, in identifying all of our holes.
Well, thank you. I look forward to working on that. Madam Chair, I made it with just right about on time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome. Good to see you. I want to get to just 2 or 3 topics, so I'll go kind of quickly. But as you know, the DoD is in the process of evaluating commercial 5G use, Madam Secretary, and use in the lower 3. It's my understanding they've issued a report. They've talked to you about it. They've shared it with you, and also the NTIA. And there's a lot of hesitancy, I think, from a variety of reasons for other agencies, for a variety of reasons, of making additional spectrum available for commercial use. It's finite, so I think the collaboration is really important. And you play an important role in advising the president on this, as you know, and understanding what our nation's spectrum strategy ought to be and what additional federal spectrum available for commercial use, whether it's licensed, shared, licensed, or unlicensed, what that ought to be. So it's critical. I think that, I serve on the Armed Services Committee too, in addition to this committee. So there's a balancing act here, right, of not just national security, but obviously economic security. What are you doing specifically to have or evaluate a strategy here? And what would you do tomorrow if DoD says the lower 3 are off limits entirely?
I think that would be deeply problematic. As we said earlier, we received the report at the end of last week, and we should arrange a briefing for the DoD and NTIA to come to provide that briefing on what the report said. It is a balance, but economic competitiveness is national security. And making sure we have enough spectrum available for private sector innovation and 5G expansion is national security. And there are ways, if we are innovative, this shouldn't be a zero-sum game. We can make more spectrum available and also not take anything away from the DoD that they need to fulfill their mission.
Madam Secretary, in August, you visited China shortly after it was revealed that the PRC had hacked your email account. And they were privy to all of your emails. In an interview with CNN State of the Union, you argue that you were firm and direct about the hack with the Chinese counterparts. Do you think they viewed your visit as a sign of weakness?
I do not.
Okay. Are you aware of additional cabinet members that you were emailing with that they were able to access your emails from?
As you know, Senator, this is an active investigation, so I don't want to go into that in this public forum.
Obviously, this is concerning, right?
No doubt. The hack was concerning. It was unacceptable. I brought it up when I was there. It's more than concerning.
Okay. I just want to switch things up a little bit with the remaining time that I have as it relates to the BEAD program. Senator Vance asked a couple of questions in this regard. What does climate change have to do with broadband?
Climate change has to do with everything. Tell me your exact question.
Well, I'll be happy to. You have climate change requirements, and that the NOFU states eligible entities must account not only for current climate-related risks, but also for how the frequency, severity, and nature of these extreme events may plausibly evolve as our climate continues to change over the coming decades. Can you tell me anywhere though, Madam Secretary, anywhere where Congress has put into law that you would require them to mitigate climate change? Can you point to that section?
Congress requires us to be good stewards of taxpayer money.
That's not my question.
To be accountable.
Where are you drawing that authority from?
We have to fund projects that will be successful. Otherwise, we'll waste money.
So I understand you might think it's important. I understand Joe Biden might think it's important, but Congress hasn't actually said that's a requirement.
But you want us to fund projects that will be successful. And if climate events prevent success.
How does deploying broadband in Branson, Missouri have anything to do with your climate agenda?
I'll give you a great example. Well, no, but for example, Senator, I talk to people all the time, including in rural places, who tell me that due to climate events, their current technology doesn't work. Like they don't have the internet when there's a storm. So climate very definitely affects the effectiveness of certain technology to provide the internet to people.
Yeah, I can tell you, having just been elected by a state with a large rural population, they're interested in their kids being able to access the internet for homework, okay? They're not interested in your social experiments, okay? So just in the line of Senator Vance's question about, injecting identity politics into your applications, respectfully, how about we just deploy the broadband so people can access the internet?
Well, your state will receive $1.7 billion, and your governor will be providing us with a plan for how he feels it should be invested.
Okay,
So,
but
Senator Markey.
thank you.
Thank you. And you have two of my all-time favorite witnesses here, so good to see you, Madam Secretary, and Ponch. You know you're somebody when you're a one-name wonder like Beyonce or Cher or Bono. So with the explosive growth over the past 2 decades, the semiconductor industry is a large contributor to the climate crisis, releasing the equivalent annual emissions of 1.4 million cars on the roads of the United States. Carbon emissions and water consumption are particularly intense while the production of the most advanced chips. As the Commerce Department prepares to issue $50 billion for chip manufacturing and R&D, we cannot ignore the environmental impact of this investment. Secretary Raimondo, I was pleased to see that the Department of Commerce is requiring chip companies to submit climate and environmental responsibility plans in their applications for the CHIPS Act funds. So, Madam Secretary, I understand that you're committing to ensuring that companies make good on their environmental commitments. Is that right?
yes, and it isn't social policy. It's good business. Every CEO of every American company will tell you they have to manage risk. And there's risk associated with climate events. And if we don't plan for those climate events, then they can insert risk into these projects, whether it's broadband or chips. So this is, companies ought to design projects to minimize adverse impacts to the project from climate and the environment. That this is just good business and good taxpayer protection. It has nothing to do with the social agenda.
Oh, great. So major manufacturing activities, including chips manufacturing, can also lead to significant environmental justice concerns for communities surrounding the manufacturing plants. Developing chips is an incredibly water, energy, and chemically intensive process. The chemicals currently used in semiconductor fabrication are extremely dangerous to workers, community members, and their families. New technologies and processes are needed to manufacture semiconductors without these risks. So can you tell us how you're prioritizing that research so that it's truly green and clean in the semiconductor fabrication technologies?
Yes. So in addition to companies who are applying for taxpayer money, they have to show us a financial plan, an R&D plan, a security plan, and we want to see a sustainability plan that we can evaluate to make sure that they're serious about these commitments.
Yeah, so we're going to open the federal taxpayers' wallets to private sector companies, but we can't do so and close our eyes to the potential environmental harm to the communities where they're going to be located. We can do both at the same time. Now I want to move to the environmental impact of chip manufacture to the impact of chip use. So big data, machine learning, and AI all require huge numbers of chip cutting-edge semiconductors and create a significant environmental impact. A study from the University of Massachusetts Amherst estimated that the energy for developing one advanced AI algorithm out of millions of potential models of algorithms would emit as much CO2 as 5 cars over the algorithm's lifetime. And that could be millions of algorithms that are out there.
Yeah.
So these data centers are using scarce water supplies across our country for cooling these chips. And while AI proponents argue that AI will solve most of our pressing problems, the energy required to power this technology is contributing to the biggest problem of them all, climate change. So can you talk about how you're integrating your thinking at Commerce on these issues, as one solution to a set of problems could actually exacerbate another even larger set of problems?
It is such an excellent question. And as you think about AI and the compute power that is going to be required for training these large models, it's much greater than any of us thought. One area of innovation in chips is making chips that consume less energy. And so the research and development money that we will spend, the NSTC, I suspect much of it will go to exactly this innovation, which is to say high compute chips that are much more energy efficient. Because otherwise, this won't be sustainable. If you think what we need to do, match up what we need to do for sustainability with the amount of compute power, we need to have new innovations.
Yeah, and I wish my mother could hear a Rhodes Scholar tell me that I asked a good question. I wish she could hear that, Ma. So, and just finally on the labor front, the good jobs that we're trying to create so that these families can thrive, have good wages, healthcare benefits. And the Commerce Department is going to be providing billions to these companies, and my feeling is they should be required to maintain strong labor standards for their workers, and non-union companies must provide workers a free and fair chance to join a union and then bargain in good faith. Is that going to be the goal?
We agree.
Senator Young.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Secretary, good to have you here. Dr. Ponch, thank you. It's really important that my colleagues have an opportunity to ask these probing questions as it pertains to implementation of CHIPS and science, to make sure it's implemented consistent with congressional will, and that we have effective administration. So thank you for being here. In your testimony, Madam Secretary, you highlight the importance of being a good steward of taxpayer dollars. Can you tell the committee, in summary fashion, how you've worked hard to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars as it pertains to implementation of CHIPS and science, and then advise members who may be listening, because they ask me, how they can track on an ongoing basis implementation of CHIPS and science dollars, these investments?
Okay, so as I said earlier, we built a team of over 100 people to analyze each of these applications. Every company, in order to receive money, has to show us a financial plan, has to show us their books of their company, their research and development plan, their national security plan, their workforce plan. And as I said earlier, this has nothing to do with social policy. This is ensuring that these companies can get the job done. I don't want my taxpayer money given to a company that doesn't have a workforce plan and therefore can't get the job done. So all of those requirements are designed to do that. Furthermore, once we give the grant or structure the grant, there'll be like an agreement, a contract, a compliance agreement. They're going to receive the money contingent upon them doing certain things, and we will tranche the money out on the basis of those milestones.
Thank you. I've had some visibility into this process from the beginning and worked with you and members of your team who are implementing, and I know that you've hired on incredible talent, people with Wall Street experience, people who understand how much is needed for each of the stakeholders, and therefore much of your work is focused on making sure we don't overspend, so that we have more resources to spend more effectively and can advance national and economic security. With respect to the Tech Hub program, part of CHIPS and Science, the Regional Tech and Innovation Hub program, you've spoken to this already, Madam Secretary. State of Indiana, we've submitted an application called Heartland BioWorks, and if designated, this would help cement Indiana's position as a very important locus of biotech, medtech, genomics, and synthetic biology innovation. Secretary, Congress has only appropriated a portion of the Tech Hub's program funding. What opportunities are we missing, especially in regards to leveraging private sector investment by not prioritizing full funding of this program?
Yeah. First, I want to thank you because you were a warrior to make sure the $500 million was in there. It's authorized at $10 billion. So we're missing massive opportunities. We have 400 applications from over 40 states, and we'll only be able to make maybe 5 or 6 sizable grants. As I said earlier, we'll designate, say, 20 tech hubs, plus or minus. Every one of them is probably worthy of maybe $100 million. That right there is $2 billion. So I think every bit of the $10 billion we could put to work to stimulate high quality tech hubs. Your application is amazing, but then again,
so are many of the others, and we will be really missing out.
Dr. Ponch, relatedly, Senator Heinrich and I recently introduced the Create AI Act to establish the National Artificial Intelligence Research Resource to serve as a test bed for the development of artificial intelligence and to help us harness the tech's amazing potential. Are you supportive of this Create AI Act? Yes or no, sir? Okay.
Strongly supportive, yes, yes.
Thank you. I have limited time, but if you could expand on the importance of federally funded research, including the National Science Foundation's National Artificial Intelligence Research Institutes, I'd appreciate that. And then the importance of appropriating the CHIPS and Science Act's research authorization. I would note at a time we're discussing artificial intelligence and the critical importance of this to our national security. The National Security Commission on AI has recommended funding at $32 billion per year, beginning in fiscal year 26, artificial intelligence. So that lays a predicate for your response, sir.
So as you know, AI of today has been made possible because of sustained investments, as I said earlier, through AI winters even over several decades. Here we are right now, and we have an adversarial competitor that's out investing in some of these areas. This is not the time to hold back. This is not the time to discuss and debate. This is the time to actually invest, out-compete in every aspect of what we need to do at AI. And what we cannot have, and I just want to make this very clear, what we cannot have is a situation like what we have in semiconductors today, where we are trying to put the Band-Aids and trying to get it back into what it needs to work. We cannot lose that advantage in AI or quantum or advanced wireless or biotechnology, you name it. And I'm extremely concerned that we are not moving fast enough because our competitors are outpacing us. And yes, we have a strategic advantage. We will not, and we should not, and must not lose it.
Thank you.
So thank you for all your support.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to both of our witnesses today. Secretary Raimondo, I want to thank you for your leadership in executing the Regional Technology and Innovation Hub program. This committee worked very hard to craft that program, and the Appropriations Committee, on which I also sit, provided the initial funding to get this program up and running. And I have heard you loudly and clearly that we need to follow through with significant additional funding in the years to come. As you know, Wisconsin worked hard to submit one sole application focused on biohealth and personalized medicine technology with a significant private sector partnership and investment. As you also know, we have a rich history of innovation, world-class research institutions, and robust manufacturing, as well as a very strong workforce and work ethic. Wisconsin is poised to become a growth sector in this cutting-edge and valuable industry. I do not envy your team's task as you look through multiple applications, but I would have been remiss if I had not also highlighted our application, as many of my colleagues have today. Now, shifting a bit, but not much, one of the fundamental issues that the CHIPS and Science Act aims to address is the too common occurrence of our American companies doing cutting-edge research and development in the United States and then manufacturing their product elsewhere. That is the story of the semiconductor in a nutshell, and part of why the CHIPS Act was necessary in the first place. Now, current law requires inventions that stem from federally funded research to be manufactured in the United States, but that requirement is often waived and literally approved with just a rubber stamp. For example, a 2022 investigative report found that breakthrough battery technology invented in a federal lab and paid for with taxpayer dollars was licensed by the Department of Energy to a Chinese company and manufactured in China. Now, I know you are not here from the Department of Energy, but the Department of Commerce has an incredibly important role to play in the solution. Now, earlier this summer, President Biden signed the Invent It Here, Make It Here executive order. It bears a striking resemblance to legislation I introduced earlier this year with Senator Vance, which we called the Invent Here, Make Here Act. Great minds think alike, that's what I'll say. Our legislation goes a little bit further than the executive order. It actually forbids licenses from being granted to countries of concern as defined in CHIPS and science to include the PRC among others. So given your role in carrying out the executive order and the duties Congress granted you in the CHIPS and Science Act over commercialization, I'm interested to know your thoughts on the issue and the need for legislative action in this arena.
Thank you. So first of all, I fully agree with you that that's what happened with semiconductors, right? We used to make them in America in search of cheap labor. It all fled our shores, and look at where we are now. So I strongly support what you're trying to do. I also assure you there is no rubber stamping in these waivers. We have to be practical. Not everything is made in America. Not everything can be made in America. However, we had a fantastic visit in Kenosha. That is a perfect example of, because we at the Commerce Department have been holding their feet to the fire of those companies, we said, we're not going to give you a waiver. We don't believe we need to, and they found a way to manufacture in your state.
Well, and I just want to make the distinction between Buy America policies that said when we build out broadband, as you announced in Kenosha, Wisconsin, that we can't necessarily source, from Nokia if they're not going to make it here. But you and with the Buy America language persuaded them to bring those jobs and that technology to the U.S. But here we're talking about new inventions funded by taxpayer dollars. And that, I feel, we have a special obligation as stewards of our tax dollars to keep the manufacturing here.
No, I agree.
Senator Capito. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank both of you for being here with us today. Kind of a long afternoon. Secretary Raimondo and Dr. Ponch, I guess I can call you that. I did vote for this bill because I think it's very critical. Secretary Raimondo, thank you for all of what you've done in broadband. We're looking forward to rolling this out. You and I have talked about this more than a few times, and you know how very important it is, not just to me, but to the rest of the country. So I've been really interested to hear that your agency, the Department of Commerce, has run into an unexpected hurdle in implementing CHIPS, and that being the NEPA process. Well, I'm on the EPW committee. I'm the ranking member, and this is an issue. Doesn't matter if it's chip manufacturing, broadband development, transmission, energy exploration. Everything is being held up by the NEPA process, the permitting process, and often the ensuing litigation delays that come forward. So then I heard that Senator Cruz has an amendment with Senator Kelly to exempt the NEPA process for the fabs for this particular bill that would exempt the NEPA process. Is that correct? And you spoke in favor of that?
Yes.
How does this administration, with you as their representative, actually square exempting one industry over another when it's holding up progress in all of national security, energy security, communication, everything? Why would that be a good idea, and how can this administration think that's a good idea?
I can only speak to CHIPS, and what I said earlier was, sometimes these processes could take, 10 years or years. And each of these would be, for CHIPS, it's a national security imperative. So what we are doing, but of course, I want to be crystal clear, we have to maintain basic environmental protections, and we will as we build out these manufacturing facilities. We are not looking to get rid of environmental protections. We are just looking to have a more streamlined process.
Okay,
so
we
can
agree
move
on that.
more
I'm not
quickly.
into eliminating environmental protections. But the length of all these projects, I would say to you, energy security is just as important as chip security. I would say transmission in this country is just as important as something that does the manufacturing chips. And then if you're going to manufacture the chips, you've got to mine them and recover them. And that means you have to permit the mine. If you look at arsenic, which is used in chips, 97% of that is from China. If you look at cobalt, 70% of that is from China. Rare earth elements, 60% of that is from China, 10% from the United States. Titanium, 86% from Japan. Noble gases are from Russia and Ukraine. But we have these resources in this country, but we can't get these mines to permit. So how are you going to go from permitting the fab when you can't get the materials permitted? There's a disconnect here. And, you know, I would be fine to try to work this disconnect out because as I said in the beginning, I think this is exceedingly important for our future.
Yeah. As you say, this is complicated and there is a balance. I know that the chair, in a bipartisan way, has worked on an amendment in the NDAA as it relates to chips. I'm in no way saying that these other issues aren't also important and they, you know, merit further discussion.
I just think it's rather ironic that an administration would actually make an exception for something they consider a marquee plan for them, albeit in the best interest of the country, when there's these other things that I think politically are more difficult to touch, that they wouldn't look for the streamlining of permitting, which should be fair and even across the board without giving up any environmental controls. I sit on the committee that does this. I've been very strong on air and water all the way through, but there's a better way to do it. Let me just ask you one quick question, and then you can respond. I think you've been asked this before, but I do obviously have my West Virginia Tech Hub application in, and we're all putting our foot on the scale for our own projects. I understand that the program requires 1/3 of Tech Hub grants and designations must significantly benefit a small and rural community. So that means one out of the 3 hub designations under phase 2 would be awarded to rural communities. Is that a safe statement?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, 1/3.
Rural, or, right, 1/3, statutory requirement is 1/3 in rural or small communities.
Okay, so that's still the plan?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's
Thank
my
you.
question.
Senator
Okay.
Sinema.
All right, sorry.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair
A few
Cantwell.
people left, just hurry if we can. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for our witnesses joining us today. And I'm proud to have played a central role in ensuring the Historic Chips and Science Act was signed into law. A year later, the positive impact on our economy and national security is clear. And nowhere is this more evident than in my state, Arizona. You know, we've led on chips since the 1940s and will continue to lead with the help of the Chips and Science Act. I was delighted to see the Department of Defense select Arizona State University's Southwest Advanced Prototyping Hub as the first and largest allocation from the law to continue its great work accelerating microelectronic research and development. In fact, since 2020, Arizona has led the nation in semiconductor investment. This includes major projects from Intel and TSMC. These investments are essential, but Arizona's leading semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem is built on the hundreds of chip-related companies working at all phases of the manufacturing lifecycle, as well as the academic institutions, workforce training programs, and small businesses that make it possible. And that's why it was so important to address semiconductor manufacturing holistically. You know, there was a time when it looked like the scientific development portions of the law would fall victim to partisan fighting. And thankfully, Senator Young, myself, and other members worked across the aisle to make sure that didn't happen. So turning to our witnesses, I want to first start by welcoming and recognizing my friend and fellow Arizonan Punch and the amazing work that you're doing at NSF. You know, I got to see your work advancing education, science, and innovation firsthand at ASU and in the senior advisory roles you played in our state government. And now I see that same dedicated insight implementing this legislation at the federal level. So thank you, Punch.
Thank you.
My first question for you is that the workforce provisions of the law, including the Chips for America Workforce Education Fund, are essential to building a healthy economy and fueling rewarding careers. Can you just briefly comment on how the NSF funding, along with public-private partnerships, have helped get resources where they're needed, specifically in Arizona?
Thank you very much, Senator Sinema. It's truly a pleasure to hear from you, and you're just taking me back to the years in Arizona by what you said, so it's always a pleasure. The workforce investments that we are making through the CHIPS and Science Act is a total of $200 million over 5 years. This year, it is $25 million. We are focusing on ensuring that pairing up with the investments by Intel and Micron as our partners who are co-investing with us are being deployed in ensuring that we are training the workforce, not only in terms of what we do with community colleges and universities, but also training the trainers, namely the teachers in K-12 institutions, so that we have this pipeline of talent ensured for times to come. So we are working on all of those component parts as we are thinking about deploying these resources. We are also working on some projects which is focused on internships with industry, as well as making sure that upskilling, reskilling efforts are also invested in. So it's a comprehensive investment of what we're doing with CHIPS and Science, as well as the main investments of NSF, which has always prioritized key technologies like semiconductor technologies. So we're very happy, and we're looking forward to the outcomes, which is very important at this time when there is so much of a need for trained, skilled, technical workforce in semiconductors that was pointed out by many of the senators today. So thank you so much for your support and championship of this CHIPS and Science Act.
Well, thanks so much, Panch. Secretary Raimondo, I appreciate the vision you outlined today for the department's economic and national security priorities at the heart of the CHIPS and Science Act. To keep pace with these goals, like establishing large-scale clusters of leading-edge logic fabs while ensuring supply chain resilience and a robust American workforce, the CHIP projects must actually be funded to be workable. Unfortunately, the NEPA reviews currently required for CHIPS grants could slow down the fund dispersal to grantees and prevent actual construction by 2 years or more from the date the department decides to start an environmental impact. This is a huge barrier to bringing new capacity online with the urgency required. Thankfully, I worked this summer to include our bipartisan provisions in the NDA that would streamline federal reviews while keeping environmental protections in place. You testified previously before the House Science Committee that you support this language, and I just want to check with you, do you still support it?
Yes.
Great. Madam Chair, I have follow-up questions that I will send over to the Secretary and to Panch, but in the interest of time, I will yield back for another member.
Thank you so much. Senator Budd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Raimondo, thank you for being here. Thank you both for being here. The Commerce Department has a lot of important rollout responsibilities with the CHIPS and Science Act and the Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment, or the BEAD program. We've talked a lot about that here today. So I hope that you would agree that your department needs to carefully adhere to Congress' intent in both of those laws. Unfortunately, serious concerns are coming to light about this administration's handling of $65 billion going to broadband. Over the summer, the Commerce Department's Inspector General issued an alert stating that Commerce is failing to do basic checks resulting in potential unlawful duplication. Recently, the Wall Street Journal reported that Commerce-funded broadband will cost more to bring broadband to a home than the assessed value of that home. That's Wall Street Journal. And 2 weeks ago, after months of letters from my colleagues and I with concerns that have been ignored, we released a report that found this administration is unlikely to reach all connected Americans with broadband. Now, this is due in large part to this administration's extreme bias against non-fiber technologies like fixed wireless and satellite broadband, and then also its allocation of funding to parts of the country that already have high-speed broadband, like right here in Washington, D.C., unfortunately. And as the report went on to uncover, the Department of Commerce allocated Washington, D.C., more than $547,000 per unserved location. 33% of those locations are at the National Zoo. This is a waste of taxpayer money. I think that most taxpayers would be horrified by the prospect of spending upwards of $100,000 or $200,000 to connect a single location, especially when many of these homes could be connected by an alternative or innovative technologies at an exponentially lower cost to the taxpayer. So question, Would it be better for taxpayers to spend $200,000 on a fiber connection to a single home that's worth $50,000? That's $200,000 to connect it. That's the connection fee and cost to a home worth $50,000. Or would it be better to spend $500 connecting that house to a high-speed satellite?
Thank you, Senator, for your question. First, I want to say the statute provides for 100.
Let's just go back. Thank you for the elaboration. I know it's end of the day, but if you could just answer, is it better to spend $200,000 on a $50,000 house, or is it better to spend $500 connecting it to satellite?
It depends on the quality.
So you're saying it might be worth spending $200,000 of everyone's taxpayer money to connect to a $50,000 house when you could do it for $500?
Well,
did I hear that correctly, madam?
First of all, this isn't my decision. Your governor and your state will provide a plan. Our job is to make sure that at the end of that plan, every single North Carolinian, regardless of where they live, has high quality, affordable
I appreciate
internet.
that, but I don't think spending $200,000
doesn't help.
Because here's what's happening. Let me get to the point. Thank you, madam. Would it be worthwhile? And because here's what's actually happening. Would it be worthwhile for taxpayers to spend $200,000 on a fiber connection to a mansion that's worth $5 million?
Nobody says fiber has to be used. And I doubt the mansion
there seems to be a bias towards fiber. That's what's happening. It's happening right now because the Biden administration, it has shunned wireless and satellite alternatives. Further, Biden BEAD rules allow taxpayer subsidies to go towards building fiber to mansions and vacation homes. These rules prohibit states from funding non-fiber projects except in extreme situations. Now, these are extreme situations which you may have begun to elaborate on, but unless they get a waiver from the federal government to do the alternative. So I urge you to eliminate tech bias from your rules and put in sensible limits that would stop subsidizing millionaires. And in my remaining time, Madam Chair, I'd like to mention this report put out by the ranking member, the Red Light Report, which is to stop waste, fraud, and abuse in federal broadband funding, and I'd like to submit it for the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, and I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I don't see Senator Sullivan. I know he wanted to ask questions, but I don't see him on the screen, so I'm just going to ask a few and then wrap it up here so that you can get on to these meetings that you both have. Secretary Raimondo, supply chain resiliency depends on security, so there's a lot of discussion around here in the last several months about how to best get that, particularly when it could be backdoor attempts to information and communication technology and data that can be used illegally for surveillance or espionage or various things. We have looked at this issue and been suggested to us from the administration that something like the GUARD Act, which would give commerce, when we think about this information age and technology and export and import controls, one thing is clear: we need a little better tool on the control of flow of what could be a backdoor of information or information that's just used in a way for purposes not friendly to our country, like illegal foreign surveillance. So we're concerned about targeting of military members, their families, immigrants. What do you think we should do about this, and what do you think about the GUARD Act proposal?
I am very supportive of the GUARD Act proposal. I'm often asked, should we outlaw TikTok? This is bigger than TikTok. Certainly TikTok poses national security risks, to be clear. But we need a comprehensive plan to update. As you say, the threats are different today than they were 10 years ago. And so the right way to do this is to empower us with a statutory set of tools to have a comprehensive approach to these connected apps that pose the national security risks you say, TikTok and others. And so I'm supportive of attacking it in a comprehensive statutory way.
And so appreciate that. Director Ponch, we're oversubscribed on the NSF side. We're oversubscribed. How do we, I suggest that we have more conversation about this, but how do we, from a scientific side, tell our colleagues on the appropriation side that we have shortfalls that could, I loved all these questions about both where we go, because obviously the bill is about creating a distributed generation of R&D. Yeah. And we already are pretty distributed, pretty competitive, way better than a top-down model of, say, other countries. But I always say that two guys named Bill created our economies Boeing and Bill Gates, right? So you never know where the next bill is going to come from. And so that's why we want a more distributed generation of R&D. But what are we going to do about the shortfall with our appropriators, that there's so much in the pipeline that could be effective?
At so many levels, I'm so glad, Chair Cantwell, you've been a strong supporter and a champion of the CHIPS and Science Act, and I know how hard you worked, so thank you very much. On behalf of the science and technology community, we owe you a debt of gratitude, and to all the folks that supported this. So I just want to say that, let me take the basic research paradigm. 50,000 proposals, we fund 11,000 of them, 20,000 of them are being told that we should fund them. They're highly meritorious. We are leaving them on the chopping floor, which means a huge loss, and our competitors are taking advantage of that. On the regional innovation engines and regional technology hubs that the Secretary talked about, they have 400 proposals, we had 700 proposals, and then we had another 130 proposals in Type 2. We are not going to be able to fund all the top quality proposals that needs to be invested in. These are ideas that are being left behind.
Here's what I suggest, that we get an answer from the scientific community about the science necessary on these proposals. Like, yes, you get an A on your paper. It is definitely where we should be investing, but we don't have the resources. That's what I think we need. Not that we want some people to have failing grades on these proposals, but so that we're prioritizing and people can see that this is really needed. Okay, this hearing will remain open the record will remain open for 4 weeks until November 1st, 2023. Any senators liking to submit questions for the record could do so 2 weeks from now by October 18th. And we ask that responses to this be done by November 1st. So thank you to the witnesses. Thank you to all our colleagues. We kind of had a double feature today in the committee, but had very good attendance at both, which I think it shows the interest of members, particularly to this afternoon in this very important legislation. Thank you both for your tremendous leadership on America's competitiveness. We're adjourned.